All right, good evening. What is up? We're back. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. There is Jay. Are you in a different place too, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in
You're
my
different from
bedroom.
usual.
Yeah, not
You're
in
in
my
bedroom.
office. Yeah.
Right. And as people see, I've moved. I'm now in the basement of my parents' house, which one thing that has going for it is that there's really good lighting here. This is one of the only times I've been lit in a way that I like on this show because I don't know, it's just got sort of kind of like fluorescent light type thing here and there that actually really works. Whereas which is the kind of lighting I don't like for most things because I'm actually a really light sensitive person. So I like the way my apartment is lit because most of the time I use secondary lighting. I put a lamp here. I like
Right.
soft lighting, but soft lighting is kind of horrible for, using a camera in this. And the other thing was, even when I had bright lights on me, it was always in such a way that I'd have a shadow going across my face. So I'm pleased with the lighting for here. So we might get another couple shows down here, depending on how long I wind up having to stay here. So anyway, we are glad to have you. It's actually people like Jay have heard me complaining about the stupid, boring weather and how warm it was. He had the warmest November on record, and then I don't know, when it gets close to Christmas, you want it to cool off a little bit. Well, today is actually a very wintry day here. It's quite cold, and it has snowed. We do have some snow on the ground. It won't last. I'm sure in a few days it'll warm up and rain will get rid of it, but for now everything looks quite Christmassy outside. Looks kind of Christmassy down here, even though it's not supposed to. It's hard to tell, but that's my collection of nutcrackers. They're not out for Christmas. That's just where they always are. But you can see them in the background on the wider screen format we're trying out tonight with StreamYard. We're trying to take advantage of some of its features, and as you can see, we actually managed to get our logo up in the corner there. Although you think that's a simple thing, but we might not be able to keep that. But at least for this episode, it'll look good. So I don't know. StreamYard is interesting. I mean, when Google Hangouts went under, we were all scrambling trying to find something, and this is definitely not as good as Google Hangouts, but at least it does the job.
It seems like there's less hiccups, at least, with it.
Yeah, I mean, it has. You're right, because one thing Google Hangouts did was it sometimes would randomly kick people off.
Yeah.
And that's never happened with this, so I can't say it's all been bad. And some of it is just, again, some of the limitations. Like, I was so excited to get my new camera in the fall, and this version of StreamYard at least doesn't allow you to take full advantage of it. I mean, I know it looks fine, but I think it's just the 720. Like, technically, this camera can stream in full HD, but it's not available through StreamYard. But I guess it looks good enough. That's one thing I was doing whenever I do like a Zoom call, which I do with which I have to do when I do the tutoring we do remote sessions now. Like Zoom, it looks really good. And I'm like, this is like the only time the camera actually looks good. But as I've said, maybe hopefully in the next little while, I'll actually record a video or two for my long dormant channel, and that way you can see some quality there. But this looks pretty good.
Yeah, this is. I think we were downgraded to 720. We should be 1080 on this.
Oh, okay. There, that's the difference too. Yeah. So this looks pretty good from a technical standpoint. And the other reason why I came downstairs, it wasn't even a lighting thing. It's because I'd had some connection issues. If you watched the last episode, and I don't know if this will be any better that way, but we'll just muddle through as best as we can. So anyway, after that overextended intro, let's get to the film for tonight, and that is from 2008. Is it? Yeah, 2008. The Korean film, The Good, the Bad, the Weird. Oh yeah, there's the Blu-ray. And Jay and I were just saying, like, because it's obviously the title is in homage to the classic Western, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, we always would call it The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. But
right.
For whatever reason, they don't include the and I have no idea why. Maybe it's a translation thing, this being a Korean film. So, this wasn't my first time watching it. It wasn't your first time. Obviously, you own the movie. Although this is my first time watching it in a long time. This is a movie I watched with a friend of mine, actually shortly after he'd gotten back from some time in Korea. And I think it might be the last movie that he and I ever watched together. And that would have been maybe 10 years ago, something like that. Mm-hmm. I went over to his apartment, and he had a couple small gifts that he got me in Korea, which was very nice. And then we watched this movie. And it's a really fun movie, which is, I guess, why we decided to do it. We've done some heavier movies, some really really deep movies as far as like themes and psychological stuff goes. And
Yeah.
as we get closer to Christmas, we're just trying to keep the mood, I guess, a little bit lighter. So this is a very violent movie, but it's not a serious movie. It's got a pretty light tone to it. It's it's a fun adventure movie.
I feel like a lot of people would really enjoy this, but they probably will never give the subtitles a chance. So
It's really too bad. But I mean, on the Blu-ray, does that Blu-ray include some sort of dub or no?
probably not.
Because sometimes there's a
No.
dub, but no, I didn't think so. Yeah, because this is a Korean movie. The main characters speak Korean, but also some characters will speak Mandarin, and some characters, there's some Japanese in there too, because this movie takes place in Manchuria, which is a place that technically doesn't really exist anymore, which is kind of fun. And one of the reasons why it works so well, we talked about. So you have the typical or classic Western, the Western genre. So that's basically mostly the Southwest United States, although there's northern parts that count too. Some, usually like sometime in the 19th century. But sometimes a Western can extend into the 20th century, at least the early part. And then, of course, you have Westerns that are actually set in other countries, but still have like sort of a similar sort of backdrop anyway. We covered one. We did an Australian Western, The Proposition, which was also set in the 19th century. But, of course, it wasn't in the American Southwest. It was in the Australian Outback, which is, kind of a similar place, a big, wide open, harsh, desolate place with some. And the main thing that comes to is sort of like a current of sort of lawlessness. You don't really have much of a centralized government in place. So it's a great place for like adventurers and bounty hunters and thieves and criminals and all that kind of stuff. And this really works for Manchuria here. Now, I've heard conflicting things. On Wikipedia, it says that this movie takes place in 1939, but in other places I've seen it takes place in 1941. That doesn't make a huge difference. It doesn't really matter, but in any case, it takes place Manchuria as like an official state, because what it had been was it was obviously, and what it is now is it's in the northeastern part of China, and actually for the last few hundred years, it was actually one of the more important parts of China, because that's where their last dynasty was the Qing dynasty, which ran from the early 1600s into 1912. 1912 was the end of the Chinese Empire, and during that time, all the Qing emperors were born and based in the area of Manchuria, and people might have heard the expression Manchu. Yeah, there was and still is a Manchu language, although I looked it up, and today it's considered an endangered language because I guess so few people say it now. But it was a distinct language that a certain group of people did speak, and it does not get brought up in this movie, but I just thought it was interesting. But anyway, what I mean is, so this takes place obviously either in the early 40s or late 30s, so during the Second Sino-Japanese War, which would eventually get folded into the larger conflict that is World War II. But in 1937, yada yada, Japan invaded parts of China, including, but before that, in 1932, they invaded Manchuria first, which was, I guess, technically separate because it wasn't part of the war. It was a few years before. Anyway, what they did was they set up a puppet state, more or less. So it was ruled by Japan, but it still had some ties to China. For instance, another movie that you could watch, which is a really good movie, and hell, we might even do it someday because I'm a big fan of the movie. 1987's The Last Emperor is about the last emperor of that Qing dynasty, UP, or Upai, or however you say it, not sure. But anyway, and his really interesting life, because at this point, during this movie, he was actually in Manchuria, but he was technically the figurehead ruler. He was the official ruler of the country, but that was just all. He was a puppet too, and he was technically a prisoner. He was based in a hotel, and he wasn't allowed to leave. So he actually spent some time in Manchuria as its ruler, but he didn't have any actual power. He was just a figurehead there. I'm not sure what year he left. I'll have to look into it, but probably during this movie. In the world of this movie, the last emperor of China is somewhere in the state, but he's more or less a prisoner, which I always thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, so it really works for the whole Western thing because it
does.
It's still early. It's the first half of the 20th century, so yeah. Now you do have things like trucks and maybe some semi-automatic weapons and stuff, but at the same time, because of the harsh terrain and how everything's spread out, horses are still used a lot, and things are really spread out. You've got there are some cities, but we're in the more wilds of it. So, you have little villages here and there and outposts and things like that. So it all works really well. for the Western thing, and it ties into, of course, other things said at that time, like pulp movies, right? This is the era of the pulp. The first thing you think of is something like Indiana Jones. I mean, obviously, this movie shares a lot with Indiana Jones. There's a lot of, it's a different part of the world, but same sort of technology and same kind of swashbuckling adventure going on. And there was one other thing that it reminded me of, and of course, like this is just more specific. And of course, if I was going to compare it to like a Western director, I'd probably say like Robert Rodriguez.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
That's
a good one.
Because it's like a Western. It, like at its core is the Western, and then you got elements of other things in it. But then it's very stylized as far as like the action and the violence and stuff goes. So yeah, it's kind of like if Robert Rodriguez had done a Western somewhere in the other part of the world. And when the end title comes up, it actually describes itself as an Oriental Western, which is interesting because most people will tell you nowadays that Oriental is an outdated term. We shouldn't use it, but this was Koreans, and that was their own decision. So I don't know. But we can call it an Eastern Western, an Asian Western, whatever. But
I think he wanted to call it a kimchi Western. This is also another way he wanted to refer to it.
Right.
Which is pretty funny. But it's really interesting the time period this takes place in, because it gives it kind of like an ambiguous feel. Like you don't really know when it's set because it's got some elements of the West and the Industrial Revolution in there, but also everyone's riding horses, using more primitive weapons, and then you've got motorcycles and trucks and cars, like you said, and fully automatic guns and stuff.
Right.
So it's kind of a big contrast there.
But it's not really the anarchism stew that it sounds like, because realistically, it would have been a lot like that. Because this is a less settled part of the world. So even though there is technology, a lot of it didn't make its way here. In fact, and it makes sense that the most technologically advanced people we see in this is the Japanese Imperial Army, which has a presence in this movie. And yeah, you would still, even though pretty much everybody in this movie is armed, not everybody is lucky enough to have a gun. They might have like a sword or an axe or knives and stuff, because this is a sort of a wild, untamed country.
There's one of the guys, one of the I guess the militia guys. He has a mace.
Yeah, that might be a stylistic choice by the director. It could be, but
as primitive as it gets,
Yeah, but even though like everything's mixed together, it's not as fantastical as it sounds. It's probably at least somewhat representative of the time and place, really. And like I said, whether it's 1939, 41 doesn't make a huge difference, unless the fact that the place where I'm pretty sure it was Wikipedia to say it was 1939 makes a point of saying it's before World War II breaks out. But of course, by 1941, the World War II was in full swing. Again, it doesn't make a huge difference for where we are in Manchuria, because that the second Sino-Japanese War was already going on. Japan had already, since 1932, they controlled Manchuria, and then by 1937 they were invading China directly, and that would continue throughout the war. So it doesn't really make a huge difference, but it does make me wonder which is actually supposed to be correct. Because actually that's one of the consequences of the end of World War II, is that Manchuria, or Manchukuo, as it was called, ceased to exist as a state. That was one of the many things that changed at the end of World War II. So technically, the Manchuria that we're referring to existed from 1932 to 1945. This puppet state of Japan, ruled by a puppet ruler at the time, the last Emperor Yupai. So a very interesting backdrop.
Yeah.
So this centers on our titular characters, the good, the bad, and the weird. It's pretty easy to figure them out. You got the good guy is a bounty hunter, the bad guy is an assassin, and the weird guy is, I guess, a thief. And obviously there's all sorts of parallels with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and each one of them could easily represent one of the three main characters from that movie. With oh god, it's hard to remember whose people are, but Clint Eastwood's character was the man with no name, but also in that movie was referred to as Blondie. He would have been Do Won, who is the bounty hunter. Who else you got? Chang Yi is the bad So that would make him Angel Eyes. Maybe there isn't somebody for the weird. It's hard to remember now.
It is. It's
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, it's
Because there is a third guy. I just can't remember. It's been so long since I've seen.
Taegu.
Okay.
Taegu is the weird. The
Oh, I know.
guy.
I'm trying to think. Right. I'm just trying to think of like who his
the ugly
counterpart,
who the ugly
who his counterpart would be in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I just can't remember because the other two, Angel Eyes is the bad, Blondie is the good. I'm trying to remember, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And also something that's kind of interesting about this movie that I noticed is just like that movie, the bad guy has the lowest kill count and the good guy has the highest. Where when you talk about the bad guys, and both times their villainy, part of it relies on stuff that happened off screen. It's part of part of their past and part of their reputation. But as far as like who actually kills the most people in the movie, it's Do-won, who becomes like a one-man wrecking crew towards the end, taking out an entire like Japanese cavalry unit single-handedly. But yeah, this movie's just like loaded with tropes like that. I mean, the number one I think of for this, of course, is the rule of cool. Like this movie's dominated by that. It's like even though the movie does do pretty well, like we said, in like not going against necessarily the time period, but sometimes stuff's just in because it's cool. And this movie's pretty loaded with that. So
I'm fine
yeah,
with that. I'm
and
totally
just like
fine with that.
and just like in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, it's about like a hunt or a race for a treasure.
Right.
So it all starts with somebody coming into possession of a map to lead to this treasure that was supposedly left by the remnants of the Qing dynasty right before it went under. So some sort of Chinese treasure. And we've got various groups. So we have those three guys all after it for their reason. Then you've also got an extra group of local bandits that want it. And then you have the Japanese army that's after it too. And at the start of the movie, it's the Japanese that have possession of the map. So the movie opens with a really cool train robbery sequence.
Yeah, it's very well done too. The entire movie's well done. It's so seamless. You really don't even think about it, but so much goes into that to all those scenes.
Right, these are really complicated scenes.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts, a lot of really good camera work. This is one of the more active cameras in a movie I can think of. This movie accounts for something called camera abuse. There's several times where the camera gets splattered with blood or dirt. Mm-hmm. There's even a part in the movie towards the end where it gets hit by a horse. So that's obviously an interesting stylistic choice. I remember when we did we did Children of Men. We were talking about how during that final long sequence that's all sort of one cut towards the end, that really cool part, there's a part where a character gets shot and the blood spatter hits the camera lens. That wasn't actually planned in that movie. Yeah. And they were originally going to take it out because they were worried about it breaking the reality. But the cinematographer of that movie fought to keep it in because he thought it was good. Now, this movie's 2 years after that. I don't know if it was necessarily influenced by that. But this movie's obviously making a very deliberate choice to have the camera sort of be part of the action. I don't think it breaks the reality because this is a sort of, it's a less realistic movie anyway. So right. I think it works really well. I think it's a cool choice.
Yeah, definitely style over substance in this one, but that's a good thing sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, it just grabs you from the beginning with a really great train robbery sequence. First it starts with various, I guess, high up Japanese officials in their sort of luxury car on this train. And first we have what's his name? Taegu, who's kind of the main character, I guess. Taegu comes in to rob them to get the map, but right in the middle of it, the bad guy comes, and he has a whole gang with him. And then it's not too long after that the Do-won arrives on the scene too. So this movie's really great at like having completely chaotic scenes.
Yeah.
Again, has to be it's very elaborate having all this set up and having all these points of view and changing and all this action going on. And it's really well done. Yeah,
I think Taegu probably is the main guy. It's probably the one.
I mean, he gets the most screen time, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably relate to him a little more than you would the other two. Even though he is a thief, but
yeah, he's a thief. But with the whole weird thing, the idea is He's one of those like accidental badasses. It makes it seem
Right.
like. Although then I think that's like just the movie tricking you because of the way certain things happen, particularly at the beginning. Like it's easy to forget because it shows him bumbling around and being lucky so much. Like at the very beginning, if his robbery wasn't interrupted, he goes off pretty much without a hitch. He's storming this car. He's storming these train cars. He doesn't know how many enemies are in front of him or what kind of weapons they have, but he's seamlessly taken them out pretty easily. So he's actually remarkably competent at certain points, and it makes you realize that it's more kind of an act, I think, this idea. Which also explains his confidence towards the end when they decide to have that three-way shootout. And he's just like, you guys are digging your own graves, because he's so confident that he can take them both out, even though most of the movie's been spent building the other two up as, ridiculous badasses. But Tae-gu has, a few moments, and there's also a part where he actually, I think it's the first time he and Do-won are together, where the former is actually getting beaten up by that really big guy. But then when he lands, Tae-gu, he takes care of him kind of without much effort. So there's a few kind of little hints there that he actually has a lot of talent, and he knows how to handle himself.
Well, at one point too, one of Chang Yi's gang members asked him, who won between the duel between him and Tae-woo.
Right, and he's like
Tae-gu, sorry.
Yeah, and his name is like a berserk button for Chang Yi. Like anybody who mentions him brings him up, and that's why he gets so mad at his gang at one point the other gang when they because there's a part where after the whole big shootout and everything goes to shit at the Ghost Market, where the local bandits are there, and one of them is already hurt, and he's like, where is he? Is he part of your gang? They're like, we wouldn't hang out with a loser like him. They don't realize they're indirectly insulting him by calling Tae-gu a loser, because he is the guy that bested him, as we eventually find out. And the other thing is, we might as well, since we do full spoilers thing, we realize that like this bumbling persona is more something he's taken on in the last little while. That back in Korea, he was the finger chopper, and he was, I guess, pretty well known and respected. And I guess he's feeling a certain amount of guilt about that, because he just says he left everything about himself back in Korea, and he wants to move on from it. So that's a little bit of a twist there, that like the guy who's sort of our bumbling level thief used to be like a serial mutilator who is obviously very feared even by like other sort of wandering badass types. But that's cool too, because it makes them all sort of stand out. So all three are obviously tough and cool, but they all have their own looks and ways of doing things to stand out from them.
But it's like you said, they spend the whole movie building up Chang Yi.
Yeah.
Chang Yi, is such a badass, but then it flashes back when he actually one-upped. Tae-gu actually one-upped Chang Yi.
Mm-hmm.
So, he wins more than once, I guess.
Yeah. And Chang Yi has such a, an interesting look. He looks like he stepped out of an anime.
Yeah.
He's got a very specific haircut with the bangs falling over one eye. He's always has his meticulous clothes. And no matter how much blood and stuff gets spilled, he always has a perfectly white up curler. Nothing ever happens to it. So there's rule of cool at work again. Doesn't matter what kind of dirty environment he's in or how much blood is getting splattered. Like, parts of him just remain immaculate, because that's just part of his character.
They have other characters that have cornrows and braids and stuff that wouldn't have existed at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
But I like it. Hey, what was the one that Quentin Tarantino did? Like a Japanese, I think it was Japanese Western.
Right.
He had a part in like.
Wait, I had that. Say Sukiyaki Western Django.
That's right. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that with the style elements.
Right. They definitely have some elements you can compare and contrast. I'm trying to remember what movie that was. Takashi Miike.
Oh, was it? Okay.
But yeah, Quentin Tarantino's in it, and it's and while the other one's like sort of obviously the good, the bad, the ugly, this one's a lot kind of like A Fistful of Dollars, as I remember. What year was that though? Is this one newer or older? Because this one's 2008. I don't know what year this one.
It may be newer than this.
Yeah, it could be.
Because I definitely didn't see this in 2008. It was a few years after that.
Yeah, I probably saw it 2009 or 2010. I hadn't even heard of it. Of course, back then, I didn't know a lot of Korean movies. At that point, I might have known, like, the Vengeance trilogy and one or two others.
Yep, it's 1 year before Sukiyaki Western Django. 1 year before. 2007. Okay. But just to backtrack a little bit before we get into the rest of the plot. Do you remember? It was like the second episode of the Sausage Factory when I brought up I Saw the Devil.
I don't know if I remember that. I mean, I know we've talked about I Saw the Devil, but I don't know if I can remember specifically then.
I mean, that was almost 10 years ago. And,
yeah, long time ago.
And like, no one had even heard of that film at the time, but this director, I mean, he's definitely not one note, because you got stuff like Tale of Two Sisters that he did, like that, is just amazing, but it's this little, almost like a claustrophobic in a, it's just in a little house, a little small production, versus this grand scale, huge production film, which was one of the highest budgets of any film in Korea, I think, when it was made. I'm sure they beat it since, but
yeah. This is Kim Jee-woon, by the way, the director. That's his name, Kim Jee-woon. And I don't know if I've seen anything else he's done besides this and I Saw the Devil. I don't think I've seen anything else.
You haven't seen A Tale of Two Sisters?
I know what it is, but I haven't actually seen it, no.
That's a great one. It's a few other ones he did, too. I think he did The Quiet. He did, what's the sci-fi one he did? It's really good, too.
Oh, yeah, The Quiet Family. I've heard of that.
Quiet Family, that's it.
I think that's his first one. I'm looking at his filmography here, though. But yeah, I think I've only seen The Good, the Bad, the Weird, and I Saw the Devil. Although I've heard of a few of these other ones. Oh, I've seen The Last Stand, but I don't know how much you want to count that, because that's an American movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is not very good.
I wouldn't say it's terrible, but yeah, it's definitely.
But I mean, it should have been better. It doesn't really deliver.
I mean, he did A Bittersweet Life, which is really good. Another one that's really good is Doomsday Book. That's a sci-fi.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
Yeah, so he's done all kinds of genres and things. And I see here he has like a deal with Apple TV now. He's got some stuff coming out that's going to be on Apple TV. Some sort of series. Mr. Robin. I don't know, but that's gonna premiere early in the new year. I don't know what it is, but he's got a series coming out on Apple TV called Mr. Robin. I don't know any background on it or anything like that.
Have you watched anything on Apple TV? Have you checked anything out on there?
No, I have like the device, but I don't actually pay for like the service with the thing. So I just use my Apple TV to like look at stuff I already have. I don't actually pay for their content.
Okay.
Which is too bad, because now they own all the Peanuts stuff, which kind of annoys me. And they have some other things.
Yeah.
Remember, people don't need me to go on another tangent, because we talked about him and how much I don't like anything he's done. What's his name? M. Night Shyamalan. But remember, M. Night Shyamalan had some sort of original show for that. I didn't hear anything about that, like if it was good or bad or anything.
I didn't hear one thing about it. And I actually like M. Night Shyamalan, some of his stuff. So
yeah, I know.
I wouldn't mind checking it out.
But yeah, no. So I saw 2008, 2010, and 2013. I saw that run of movies: The Good, the Bad, the Weird. I Saw the Devil, and the American film, The Last Stand. The Age of Shadows is I think on my Netflix watch list, and I just keep kind of forgetting about it. That came out. That's a movie he did in 2016.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Which is, it's my kind of period piece. I think it's set in Shanghai and Seoul in the 20s, and it looks pretty cool. So, and that's him. And that's more of like a sort of a straightforward period drama as far as I can tell. So yeah, he's really run the gamut of different sorts of genres, because I think that's like a period drama. This is, this is a period, but this is, more of a flashy sort of fun adventure movie. And he's here we go. The base.
Sean says it is good. I'll have to check that out, Sean.
Yeah, I hope it's still on. If it's not there, I'll have to find it somewhere. Because at least for a while, because God knows, it's stuff gets changed all the time. It was on my Netflix watch list and kind of buried with other movies, but it was something I remembered. I don't even remember if I knew it was that director. I just remember thinking it seemed like a cool thing. But yeah, I've always meant to see A Tale of Two Sisters, which I've heard is somewhat twisted, which sounds
You
cool.
probably already know the twist in there.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I actually don't for once, which is nice.
They remade it in America, of course, with I forget the name, the title, or I don't remember what it was called, but it wasn't great. They remade everything, I think.
And I actually rewatched I Saw the Devil sometime this year, like only a few weeks ago. So that's pretty fresh in my mind. I mean, I saw it years ago too, but I did see it in this. It's one of the more interesting, like of all, there's so many like movies with serial killers. I really like the killer in that because he actually stands out as somewhat unique. He's not kind of like cookie cutter. The problem with like, that's the problem with like a serial killer, like maybe the most famous one being Hannibal Lecter, is like it just led to so many like sort of imitators. It's like, oh, like we love this suave genius serial killer that's playing cat and mouse with you and is always a step ahead of you. I mean, I get it. It is fun, but you have to sometimes try different approaches too. And I like that this serial killer has his own sort of personality and vibe that stands apart from so many of those others. Like he is sort of playing games too, but it's pretty different. I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's definitely a movie I'd recommend. I Saw the Devil. Interesting movie. Because it's one of those movies where if you read what it's about, it really does not prepare you for what you're actually going to watch.
Right.
I'd say. Which is definitely cool.
This is yet another movie featured in this book. Seems like we're on a roll here for.
Oh, the good, the bad, and the weird. The weird is on this too.
Seventh one, yeah.
Wow, yeah. Oh, I think we got way more than 6 or 7.
I'm just saying in a row.
In a row, yeah, exactly. Because we probably have maybe 30 or 40 of them.
I would think,
very possible.
Definitely, probably 75% of the films we've covered on here.
Yeah, I'll have to get the book myself. I've seen it around. So yeah, while this movie is less serious, but since I do harp on some of the historical things, they do touch on some of that. Like for instance, like some of these exiled Koreans that are, hoping for independence, and then you've got the other Koreans you see in this movie. There's some wealthy Koreans that are there that are basically loyal to the Japanese because I assume the Japanese, keep them in comfort. And you see a few characters, particularly the bad guy Shang-Chi, showing his disdain for these people. So that's the other thing, even though, because Manchuria is like an interesting mix because there are Koreans, but there's also Chinese, Mongolians,
right.
And then the people in charge, I guess, would be like invading Japanese now, but we don't see them in the movie. But even some White Russians were in there because until the early part of the 20th century, after the Russo-Japanese War, where Japan defeated Russia, there was actually a heavy Russian presence in Manchuria in part of at least the latter half of the 19th century. If people aren't familiar, or I'm sure people have heard the term White Russian, but if you're not sure what that actually means, it has nothing to do with ethnicity. It just means opposite of Reb, meaning communist. What it means is, everybody knows, Russia was ruled by the Tsars and blah, 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 right up until the Russian Revolution in 1917, and that was the end of the Tsars. The communists had their revolution and they killed the royal family, blah, blah. White Russians were those Russians that were not down with the revolution. They did not like it. They liked this. And so a lot of them left. And that's why some of them wound up in Manchuria, because they wanted to get away from the new communist government. So that's what White Russian means. It means sort of like the old guard. Well, then I guess you don't need me lecturing you, do you, Al? I guess people don't need me explaining Russia. But for other people,
Al actually speaks Russian, believe it or not.
Oh, that is awesome.
And can understand it as well. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, it's a difficult language. I'm trying to think of some Russian phrase. I must know something. Do svidaniya.
Huh.
Niet. Da.
Achtung. Oh wait, no, that's German.
That's German. Vodka there. Just go to Russia and say vodka, and they'll know, and they'll point you. They'll say, we know where you can get vodka. I remember there was a really weird commercial for, it might have been Smirnoff vodka, right? I think it might have been, and I don't. This only would have run in Canada. It's this thing where it's like at a Russian bar, and there's a group of other Russian, like they're also Russian, they're younger guys, and they're drinking the Smirnoff, and they're watching like hockey on TV or something, and I have no idea why, but they're saying something about Canada and Canadians, and then the bit is they're kind of like imitating Canadians to make fun of them, and at one point one of them goes, "You remember in '72 when we beat Russia?" And the whole bar stops and look at them, and they're like, "We're Russian, we're Russian." It's so weird. Actually, when I was in always the most useful thing, and always the first thing kids learn, right? It's like that's the word they want to learn. When I was in New York City in 2013, and I went to the NHL store. I didn't see any Russians there. I don't remember if it was the same day I went, but I did go to the NHL store. But one of the days, it might have been a different day, I was eating at a restaurant when at the table next to us, several Russian guys came in, and they had just been at the NHL store because they had all sorts of bags of stuff with them. And I really wanted to talk to them about hockey, but I didn't. But that's always the great thing that unites Canadians and Russians. It's our love of hockey and our crazy storied rivalry. But anyway, yeah, so there's some white Russians in Manchuria at the time, too. But there's even a part where they even show a couple black people getting off the train at the very start when the big gang of bandits comes and they make everybody get off the train. You can actually see a couple black people in the crowd, too. So Manchuria was quite the mix in its day. And actually, a really good setting for movies. You could definitely set quite a few stories and movies there because of what we said in the intro, like just what a sort of great, colorful backdrop it makes and what a good backdrop it is for things like adventure and treasure hunting and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's in a way, like, this movie is, of course, the homage to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's too bad they didn't make two more, have a whole trilogy, just like the Dollars trilogy. It would be pretty cool. But as far as the budget, yeah, I mean, it really shows, doesn't it? Like, the quality's there on the screen.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
Like, it's not like a movie that has to be full of, like, crazy effects. It's not full of CG and stuff, but I mean, it's got some really big action set pieces and explosions, all sorts of vehicles. Yeah, this is some complicated scenes, and that's really, I guess, what I respect the most about the movie is just how competently, because the movie is basically just a couple quiet scenes in between to connect the big, large action scenes, which are all really, again, complex and far-reaching, involving all sorts of characters, all sorts of devices. All with really great camera work that I really appreciate.
Yeah, not just the the cinematography and the camera work, but the fight choreography. I mean, it's all great.
Yeah,
like, I mean, have one bad thing to say about
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of a lot of those shoot 'em up style movies, and some of the better choreography you're going to see for that. Some really really fun gun battles with a lot of movement, like the part at the Ghost Market when you've got when we have the good guy, just got to keep their names.
I know it's hard for me to get them to.
I sound bad at
T-Goon.
No, the other guy, the bounty hunter.
The good guy.
Do-Won. So Do-Won. Because you got Do-Won, he's up on the rooftops picking people off, but then he's actively swinging on ropes, shooting people. Like, he's obviously the major marksman of the movie. You see him making ridiculous shots in the movie. He can hit people. At one point, he sees the guy. There's a guy with a sniper. He only has a normal rifle, and one of the guys tracking him has a sniper rifle. But he sees the sun flash off the guy's scope, and it just takes him out. And yeah, at other parts, he's swinging on ropes, shooting guys one-handed. It's really cool. Really cool stuff like that. And of course, towards the end, he's riding horseback, mowing down Japanese soldiers, and he's doing the cool kind of flipping reload that Arnold Schwarzenegger does in T2, where he sort of flips it over one-handed to reload. Can't remember what kind of rifle it is. It's a not bolt action. It's a lever action. It's a lever action rifle. So again, I'm not as familiar with how some of these guns actually work, so it might once again be a rule of cool thing. Maybe they're stretching what it could actually do in reality, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Taigu mostly likes to use he has like two pistols that look kind of, they look like kind of like Lugers.
Lugers, yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's sort of his signature weapon.
That apparently never go empty. They're always loaded and ready to go.
Well, speaking of stylistic action films, it's following the John Woo rule, right?
Yeah, but what are you gonna do?
The John Woo rule, and that's one thing. Like you could say this movie reminds you of that, but at the same time, it doesn't use most of the John Woo thing. You never have somebody like diving through the air with two going. Obviously, the temptation is there to do that, but he's like Kim Jee-woon is like, no, I'll do it my own way.
Yeah, we need to do a John Woo on here, one of the good ones.
Yeah, for sure. Those are some of my favorite action movies ever. You know what I haven't seen in forever is his first one, A Better Tomorrow. Once I thought,
oh man,
I've seen it. I just haven't seen it in years.
Oh,
once I was so excited to buy it that I didn't even look at the cover properly and realized that I bought a Korean remake. That came out in like 2005 or something, which is fine. But I was like, oh man, A Better Tomorrow. It wasn't until I actually bought it. I was so excited that I didn't even look at it properly. I realized that this was not the John Woo film from 1987 or 85 or whatever.
Did you watch it?
Oh yeah, I've watched it, and like I said, it's fine. It's not bad. It's not like a terrible remake, but it just doesn't. It can't deliver. But yeah, my favorite John Woo is probably Hard Boiled.
Oh, Hard Boiled's good.
Killer's probably second, John.
Yeah.
I own those I've got the Shout Factory 2-pack of them. They come together.
I love the part in Jackie Brown, when they're watching the videos and he's telling Robert De Niro about the different guns. And he was talking about when the Killer came out, everybody wanted is it a 45, whatever gun he uses in there. Everybody wanted it. Everybody wants to be the Killer.
Yeah. Oh, who is that? That's man, why am I so bad at names today? It'll come to me.
Not Chow Yun.
Yeah, Chow Yun-fat, thank you. Chow Yun-fat was basically the go-to actor back in the day for John Woo, which is interesting too, like how well he fit into it. Because before he was in what was it, A Better Tomorrow, like he was a soap star. That was his thing. That was his thing in China. He was a big soap star, and then suddenly he just becomes this awesome action guy.
Didn't you tell me that he's like ridiculously wealthy and he's just giving all his money away to charity?
Like, not only is he giving all his money away, like he's been doing it for like the last at least year, but like he is so much richer than you would even think.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this before. Like a lot, even like A-list actors, they might like some of the top ones might have $100 million in the bank. Yeah. He had $800 million.
Man, that blows me away.
I mean, you look at somebody else and they might have 80. This guy had 800. Yeah.
I mean, look at the Brad Pitts and the Jim Carreys, the guys that make, $30 million a picture. They're not worth near that.
Right. Some of it, I think, just has to do with like not going crazy with your money. I mean, at the same time, I think this is why he realized like there's no way as a human being I need to keep all this money. But at the same time, the other guys aren't. It's not just because they're just donating to charity. It's because they're being stupid with their money. Right. Brought this up many times. Like back in like the late 90s, speaking of like a John Woo, you have Face Off and stuff. You've got our man Nick Cage, A-list star, big guy, millionaire, making millions by pictures, and he tried to live like he was a billionaire. Yeah. Like, what an idiot. You're richer. And stuff. You're richer. Yeah, exactly. You're richer than like 99% of the world's population or whatever, or 98, whatever. You're way up there and you're trying to live like even higher out of your bracket, which is why for the last 20 years, he's been in like every movie that's come along because he has to keep paying all his creditors. Because, buying castles in Scotland and dinosaur bones and all that shit. Like, so I think part of it is that the Chow Yun-fat probably just didn't spend like a crazy person.
He had to make a lot of money in ads or something, like doing advertisements. So somehow, or maybe he got some back end money off of those movies.
Yeah, he's been in over 120 films and 24 different television series.
Wow. You know, I'm rewatching this film now, and I just noticed something. You know, when he
Despite his well, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Despite his, I'm just reading a line here. Despite his wealth, Chow lives modestly. He is frequently seen at food stalls and on public transportation. So,
when Man G is captured, or Man Gil is captured by
yeah,
Chang Yi, and he's trying to send a message, and he's cutting off one of his fingers. He doesn't get there because the knife's too dull. But
yeah.
and this is before he knows that he's finger chopper, right? Or finger cutter.
I think he knows. That's why, yeah, he's always known because he hasn't forgotten what he looks like. Like that's the thing. That's why, like I said, that's why sometimes it makes him so mad when people mention him because he knows he's the guy that bested him. So he knows all along. It's only a revelation for the other guy
Oh, okay, I got you.
because he's the one that says, like, I remember you 5 years ago. Because yeah, Gu himself says, like, I want to leave the past behind and Taigu, and I want to forget about it. So he's known along. That's why it's the berserk button for Chang Yi, and why when that guy said, "We heard that you guys fought a duel once," like, so who won? And he murders one of them just for bringing it up. He's one of those bad guys you see in movies every once in a while that just sort of kills anybody that bothers him even a little bit, or even interacts with him. Every once in a while, you have one of those bad guys where they kill almost everybody they come into contact with, and he frequently kills his own men too.
Yeah.
And he has like a weird philosophy about that. As a lot of killers do with them. The very first movie he did on here had a killer with a philosophy like that. The guy from No Country for Old Men, right?
Uh-huh.
All these killers have like their weird philosophy, and this guy has it too. And Gu calls him out for it at the end. He's like, "Okay, that's your philosophy. It's not mine." Like, it's like, screw you guys. Like, I just want to get out of here alive.
There are no teams. Taking it back to Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah. But yeah, it's another one of those. His friend, I guess you can only assume, since we never see him again, that his friend eventually dies because he has so many stab wounds. But we don't actually see him again, and we don't see Granny again after a certain point either, although I guess she probably lives.
Yeah, the next time we see Mangil, he's like being dragged by a horse.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's already suffered like 35 stab wounds. So yeah, it's pretty rough watching what happens to him just for being his partner.
Yeah.
In France, this translates to the good, the brute, and the lunatic.
Well, about lunatic's not appropriate. He's the least sane of the three, I think.
You mean most sane?
Most sane, sorry.
Yeah. Well, Do-won, he can be pretty cold-blooded, but he's still mostly there. Like, he has practical reasons. He's like, I'm going to get the figure chopper, and this guy, like, he thought they were the same guy. But he's like, because he's a bad guy. But also for the money, of course. And he's the only one, even though he has the highest kill count in the movie, he's the only one that hasn't, like, just mercilessly executed people or hacked off fingers.
Right. Kill count is 69 in this film, by the way.
Wow. That is high. Because, yeah, as we said, it really starts going crazy when he's picking off the Japanese soldiers.
Yeah, so many of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty common template for movies when you have like multiple sort of parties all sort of searching for the same goal and coming into conflict with each other. But I'm just a sucker for those sorts of movies, especially with bigger casts. Like, this is actually just kept to them, although there's other elements. Like, I'm always a big fan of those like multiple points of view things. Like maybe the ultimate example is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, where you have all these different people. They're all racing to find the money.
Mm-hmm.
I've just always been a fan of those sorts of movies. It's just such a great formula for something fun and entertaining.
Yeah.
This focuses on the three, but there's other elements into it because you have like the local Manchurian bandits and you have the Japanese military thrown into the mix too.
Are the Ghost Market gang? Is that a separate gang?
I guess so. I guess they must be. Most of them get killed.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that other gang. that's I'm trying to remember the name of the guy that's after them. Byung-Hun. He's not actually the leader. I don't think they named the leader, but he's like the right hand man of the leader. He's the one that gets named.
The leader was
of the Manchurian gang.
The leader was the guy with the pipe.
Yeah,
who had the funky pipe.
Right. So this is one of the movies that would not pass whatever that test is. I can't remember what it's called, the women thing, because there's no female characters in the movie. Not that the movie doesn't really call for that. Like, it's just one of those movies where women are mostly background people.
Well,
but that's not
realistic,
right? It's not. I'm not going to criticize it. And they do get an active role at one part where where the Korean guy who's working for the Japanese tries to trap him, and he uses the two women with him to drug him. Good old Park Chan-wook. Yeah, we were talking about him not too long ago. So many good and interesting Korean directors.
So many, man. I forget the guy that directed the Yellow Sea, but I'd like to do that on here at some point.
Yeah.
And Chaser, he did Chaser also.
Yeah. Not too long ago, I didn't watch all of it. I was watching part of The Handmaiden, but that's Park Chan-wook. But his English movie is one that I'm dying to do on here, which is Stoker.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, I've had penciled in that I always thought Stoker. And I'm sure it's pretty obvious. It's not like something I figured out on myself, but it has elements that compare really well to one of my favorite Hitchcock movies, Shadow of a Doubt. And I would really like to do those as a back-to-back compare. And for a long time, Stoker was on Prime for me. Now it's been gone, and it drives me nuts. So that's still something. So, yeah, we haven't actually done any Park Chan-wook yet. But that's the one I'd like, even though it's funny because that's actually his English language one. But that's the one I kind of most want to do. Although we've always said that maybe one of the Vengeance trilogy ones, like maybe one of the other two. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is on Stars for me, which is also, by the way, where I watched this movie. I watched The Good, the Bad, and the Weird on Stars. And I guess it's the international cut, because the other thing you'll find if you look up this movie is that there were two cuts of it, and they're pretty much the same as far as I can tell. The only thing that's different is the ending. The Korean theatrical ending makes the movie a little bit longer and adds some stuff. But I think the definitive edition is the shorter international cut. Because, yeah, I was having some confusion because I read in some places that in the international cut, like, they don't show that the other two survive. That it's understood that they just all die. But the version both of us saw shows they survive, it just doesn't show how. Whereas in the Korean cut, it shows how they survive and actually even has a little extra bit with remaining Japanese troops showing up. And that's the version I first saw years ago, was the Korean version with a somewhat longer ending. I looked it up. So the international cut's 130 minutes and the Korean cut's 136 minutes.
Didn't you say there's some additional footage of the Japanese, the army at the end? Right.
So there's this part where after he shows it, so to explain if people haven't seen the Korean cut, after they have their Mexican standoff, shoot off, and everybody shoots everybody down, the first guy to get up is Gu. And he shows, and it's one of the tricks from one of those Clint Eastwood movies too, is that he had some sort of like metal thing under his shirt to, block the bullets. And then he like crawls over to Yee's body and finds that he has like a bunch of diamonds or something. And he starts to like laugh. And then suddenly a whole bunch of Japanese soldiers show up and surround him and point their guns at him. And he tries to bluff them with a stick of dynamite, not realizing he really has lit it. And they all take off, but he manages to like throw it away. So that's what happens in that. And then they show something. Something explains why the other guy gets up too. Why Do-won gets up. Also, before he takes the diamonds, like to make sure that Yee is dead, I think he like either shoots or stabs him a few more times. Like he attacks the body. It's hard for me to remember. He kind of I think he like obliterates the body or something. It's been quite a few years since I've seen it. But yeah, I was gonna say, does that Blu-ray contain the other cut, or
this is just the international version? No, some interviews behind the scenes, some highlight reels, making of, but no.
I mean, I assume I watched the DVD of it, but I don't remember what it looked like or anything like that.
Your friend must have gotten a disc from Korea.
It makes sense because this was
Yeah.
literally after he'd come from Korea, so that could make that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost prefer I was telling you before we started recording, I kind of prefer the just fade to black at the end after the oil sprays out.
Right. And that's a sort of semi-nod to another movie that we might do on here sometime. The classic, what's it called? The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Of course, in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, the treasure's real. They just wind up pissing it away because they're greed, and the whole point is nobody gets it. And this is sort of the same thing. It's like nobody gets it because like an oil well is useless to those three. There's nothing they can do with an oil well, even if it is, a valuable thing. It's not something that they could do. So I think it's sort of an allusion to that. The idea it's like, oh, they finally found the treasure and none of them can have it. Although it's for much different reasons. Yeah, there's very few quiet moments in the movie. It's mostly set pieces. Like it opens with a great train robbery sequence. Then the next big sequence, I guess, is even though there's a smaller one too, because there's a smaller one where after he meets up with his partner, he's staying in that like hotel place. That's the first time Yi doesn't go after him himself. He just sends some men. He manages to get away from that. Then after he meets up with Do-won, there's the big attack on the ghost market. And then there's there's some smaller ones, and then of course leading up to the end, there's the massive chase scene that involves the Japanese army, the bandits, Yi, and all three of them. It's so good, really good music at that point too. Mm-hmm. Really, really fun, memorable music.
It's good music throughout the whole film. Really, it's really it plays off of the action in the film, but it's like three main sequences, like the train sequence, then you've got the ghost market sequence, and then like you said, the sequence at the end, the chase sequence.
Yeah, movie's built around that, but there are some smaller action scenes in there too, and there's some humor. It's not like maybe laugh out loud funny, but it's a fairly quirky movie, particularly with him with him as our sort of main guy, the weird guy.
Taegoon,
yeah, because he's got sort of a goofy not Jimir.
He's goofy, like the comic relief.
Yeah. Which is a good contrast because the other two characters are really serious.
Right. Almost too serious.
Taegu. Speaking of which, he actually does one of my favorite moves in any action sequence ever. Because one, it's funny, but two, you also realize it's the most practical thing to do in that situation, and nobody ever sees it. Because it's part of the end chase thing, which involves most of the time he's on his motorcycle, right? So he's on his motorcycle. Other people are there's a few trucks. There's a lot of people on horseback, but he's mostly on the motorcycle. So you see a lot of movies where you've got good guys and bad guys in vehicles. And one pulls up to the other, and they're like, "I'm going to jump onto your vehicle, and you're going to have to fight me off," or like that. I love it. So he's driving the motorcycle by himself, and he gets attacked by a Jeep that has a guy driving another guy. So the guy that's not driving is like, "I'm going to jump onto the motorcycle and attack you." And usually how that works in movies is that's what happens. They jump on. It's like, "Oh, I have to fight the guy off while I'm still driving." He does the obvious thing. When that guy jumps, he jumps too. So the other guy jumps onto a motorcycle, no longer being driven by anybody. He crashes, and Kaegu lands on the Jeep and easily takes out the driver. I love that moment because not only is it funny, but you realize it's the most practical thing to do in that situation. And yet I've never seen anybody else do that in a movie. It's always, "Oh no, I'm getting attacked. Now I have to fight the guy and still try to drive." It's like, no, just abandon the motorcycle altogether. I love that move. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. In the big damn heroes moment, as it's sometimes called.
Mm.
But yeah. But I really like, even though maybe it's kind of cliche, I do like how they all stand out from each other. Do-won sort of dresses a lot like a cowboy. Chang-Yi is kind of like a stylish, stylish, almost like a pop star look in a way. And then we've got our like guy who looks like he just picked up his clothes at a rummage sale. It's just he puts on whatever.
Launchpad McQuack.
Yeah, he's got that weird. Is that what people wore when they rode on motorcycles? Like before people realized you should wear helmets.
I thought it was like a pilot thing.
Oh, it could be a pilot thing. Yeah. Anyway, he wears that. I don't even think he has a scene where that comes off. Like that's always on his head, like the whole time, except for at the very end when he tries to walk away and he shoots it off a few times. Right? He keeps trying to go away and he keeps shooting it off, which really makes him mad. But yeah, everybody's got a very distinct personality and a distinct look.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense because they are the good, the bad, the weird. But yeah, I really wish this could have been a trilogy. I think you easily could have gotten a whole trilogy out of these characters and that backdrop, or at least that character. Because I realized, just like in the Man with No Name trilogy, the only same character is the main guy, Clint Eastwood. But you could do something similar with him.
Yeah, I can imagine it. It was pretty well received in Korea, just because it's such a great film.
Yeah, it actually might have won some awards. Let's see here. It has a really good score on Rotten Tomatoes, I see, 84%. Metacritic, Variety, blah, blah, blah. There was criticism directed toward the excessive violence and simplicity of the script. Oh boy, well, let's hear from the Village Voice, because we care so much. Kim's filmmaking is generally cartoonish in a bad sense, as he squanders his set pieces, flashbacks, and other attention-getting with sometimes downright wretched staging. Like, I couldn't agree more strongly with that. I think his set pieces and staging are top-notch.
I couldn't, yeah.
I think, like, this is how you do these sorts of staging and set pieces. I just think they're so well thought out and so well choreographed. Because, again, when you have, like, things like the train scene, you've got a guy moving through the cars, you've got all these extras, you've got people shooting at him, then you have the car being attacked from outside, and there's people getting shot through the windows. I think it's all extremely well done. And the camera always seems to be in the optimal place.
I disagree strongly with all of these criticisms.
Yeah.
Boston Globe says something, LA Times. It's...
Yeah, but there was a lot of stuff that gave it. Yeah, there's a lot of positive stuff here too, even from Western stuff. New York Post gave it a 4-star rating, saying, "Good, the bad, the weird may owe a lot to other films that are always fresh and never boring." So there's a lot of positive stuff too.
As vigorously staged as it all is, sometimes confusingly, occasionally with camera torquing flair and impressive stunt work.
Mm-hmm. Well, to answer your thought there, it was the second highest grossing Korean film in 2008 and still remains one of the highest grossing films in all of South Korea. So
good.
Very, very successful. Very successful movie, which is cool. Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to remember some of the humor. And of course, there's 2 different people he takes out by like stabbing them in the ass. I love it with the big guard, where after he gets drugged, they just drop him into some cell with some kids. I guess they're going to sell into like slavery or something, right? And then the big guy comes in. He's like, "Where is he?" He's like, "Right here." And he breaks the thing on him, and the guy like smiles at him. But then he manages to like stab him in the ass. It's like, "Kids, look away!" And then he like jump kicks it even further into him.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty awesome. And there's another guy he gets that way too.
But yeah, I guess after the ghost market scene, then we kind of have a little bit of I don't know if you want to say it's bonding between Goo and the good character. Damn it, I can't keep their name straight.
Do-won.
Well, I mean, you kind of feel like they're bonding a little bit, but I don't know.
It's interesting because Do-won's the one that wants to talk, and he's just like, he doesn't care, right? Goo just wants to sleep. He's like, "You still talking?" Because Do-won's one of those people that I think wants to understand things and be able to rationalize things. Whereas Goo as we said, he's somebody that has changed his life because he used to be a very different person in Korea. And even though he's still kind of a shady guy, he wants to move away from, I guess, the more violent past that he had.
I guess he's trying to be a good guy.
Yeah, in his, in the only way he really knows how. So he's a thief, but because I mean, he does shoot people on the train, but he's not the one that shoots like unarmed innocent people.
Right.
Which is what Yi does. At one point, remember, where they're up the front, where after Do-won is attacked and Yi had been shot at by him, and he goes in, there's like a woman that keeps screaming. You don't actually see him do it, but it's off camera. He like just shoots her to shut her up, so she stops screaming. So Yi's a very cold-blooded, passionless killer.
I was reading that this film was cut a little bit for some of the animal scenes when it was released in the UK.
Huh.
Which I don't even remember any violence towards animals or anything, but
no, I just remember horses
down.
running. Yeah, maybe some falling down. I know that like in the old time westerns that was bad because they would literally like trip the horses with wires and stuff. But I can't imagine this film actually would do something like that. But yeah, I only remember a couple of horses sort of falling or bumping into each other. I don't really remember anything particularly violent.
I mean, it pretty much rules out all westerns, doesn't it? I mean, there's going to be horses. They're probably going to fall down at some point.
Yeah. Well, they do it better now, I guess. But pretty much any sort of like old, from like the golden age of westerns, like 40s, 50s into the 60s. Yeah. They'd really trip the horses and then they'd break their legs. So they'd have to kill them and stuff. Because like if a horse breaks its leg, you have to kill it, I guess. Like because it won't heal properly or something.
Is that real? I know I've always seen that in movies, but I guess like if you're out somewhere, there's no way for you to get the horse back to where it could get treatment or whatever. So up, get the gun. The horse broke its leg.
Apparently one of the actresses in this was some sort of star, and she just had a cameo in the movie, but I guess it was kind of a big deal because she was fairly famous in Korea. Jee-woon.
Was she on the train?
I don't even know. She played somebody called Na Yeon, but I'm not sure if she was on the train or if she was, one of the courtesans or whatever you want to call them that was working for the guy that was working for the Japanese. I don't know if that was her. But she's been in some other movies. I don't know them. But I think maybe she was a pop star before that, or
yeah, probably.
No, just an actress.
Oh,
but she was on a lot of television dramas and stuff. That's what it is.
I think I see her now after the Ghost Market when they're making their way out to where the treasure is. They come across.
Yeah, as I said, there's no real significant roles for any women in this movie. I just noted that she must be somebody kind of notable because it's pointed out that she has a cameo. So I guess she would have been somebody that Koreans would have really recognized, even in just a little small role like that.
Yeah.
But I have not seen any of the movies she's done.
A brothel. I guess this is a brothel / like opium den.
Right. He falls into that trap kind of easily. You gotta watch your drink.
Yeah.
And that's the one part of the movie that actually takes its time to explain kind of what the socio-political situation is. The guy pulls out the map and to show where the Japanese have influence and the Chinese stuff like that, because he's trying to play this whole thing that he's part of like a Korean. He's trying to return the Koreans to independence. Okay, so geographically, people know Korea, north and south, is like a peninsula. This is directly north. Manchuria is directly north of Korea. And Japan has a long, long history of invading Korea and trying to take it over. And at this point, Japan did not directly control Korea, but they controlled Manchuria above it. And they were trying to control other places and, of course, would get overly ambitious and invade China itself in 1937.
So Manchuria now is just a part of mainland China.
Right.
It's no distinction.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is there. I don't know if part of it is Mongolia now or what, because part of Manchuria, at least at the time, bordered on Mongolia. So I don't know if Mongolia absorbed any of it when it was over or what. I don't think so. I think it's just within China.
Let me pull up a map here because I'm curious now.
Because I mean, there's Manchuria, and then there's distinctly this period, the Manchukuo, which would have been the puppet state of Imperial Japan between 1932 and 1945.
So would Xi'an, the city of Xinyang, be around where Manchuria would be?
Let's look.
It's like right above North Korea. Yeah, I'm sure those borders have moved for all these guys.
A lot of these have moved. That's why it's confusing.
Yeah.
And you know, the decade just before this too was because, as we said, even though they had the last emperor, he was only a puppet and didn't really control anything. And once you got into the 20s, that was known as the warlords era, where China was just carved up illegally by various warlords. So Manchuria was probably involved in that too, I would assume, at the time, in the chaos that was going on there. You know, speaking of which, so 1912 was when the Qing dynasty ended, and that was the official end of Imperial Japan. You know, Jackie Chan did that period piece 1911 about like the events leading up to that. I still haven't watched that. I'd like to watch that.
I haven't either. Have you heard about the film that he's doing with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I saw a preview for it and told you about it. Yeah. It looks,
you told me about it? Okay.
If you've seen the preview, because it looks terrifyingly bad. It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like dressed up like he's like a, you know, he's got the wig and the red and everything. Oh, it's awful. And of course, he still just talks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's called Iron. It's called Iron Mask. I don't know if it's supposed to be a play on Man in the Iron Mask, except they throw a Chinese guy in there or what it is. But man, it looks so terrible and cheap. It makes me sad as a fan of both guys. It's like, you guys should have done that movie in like 1996.
Yes.
Like 2021 or whatever is a little late.
Yeah, I think Jackie's had a few films that aren't getting great receptions as of late.
Well, I mean, I can understand it. Like, his North American output in the 21st century is mostly garbage.
What did you think of you finally saw The Foreigner, didn't you?
Yeah, it's good. That might be the last good thing he's done.
I like it a lot.
It's not great, but it's good, and it's a good role for him, and he gets to do a bit of dramatic stuff in that. Did you see the 2013 Police Story?
No, did he remake it?
It's just part of the series, but it's called 2013. Again, you know, only the first two have any continuity. After that, it's just sort of standalone stories. So, but yeah, it's called Police Story 2013 because that's what it came out in. But I mean, it deals with the fact that he is an older guy. It's weird because the police story in movies are known for their crazy action. It's like it has action, but it's really scaled down. But it's interesting because he does do some dramatic sort of acting in that. It doesn't have any jokes. It's unlike the other police stories. Like, there's no comedic tone at all. It's serious. I don't know. Like, it's not great or anything. I'd still recommend watching it to see what you think.
Yeah.
It's about like a weird, elaborate hostage situation going on in that, and he has to go in and save the hostages.
Do we do a commentary for Police Story 1 or 2?
1. We still have to do 2.
We need to do 2.
Yeah.
There's an add-on service to my Amazon called Hi-Ya, and it's got Police Story Lockdown on it.
Yeah, is that what 2013 is? It must be Lockdown, right?
Yeah, it's Lockdown.
But it's much less high than other movies. It's really scaled down, and it's really serious too because like the bad guys in it are like really evil and mean. They're just like murdering innocent people all over the place. Like I don't even know if it's related, but at the very beginning, it starts like he's part of like this special team of cops, and like his whole team gets like murdered except for him, and he has all this PTSD, and then later he has to go in and do this hostage situation. And I can't remember if the events of the start have anything to do with that, or if it's just to set up like his pain, but because it's been a few years since I've watched it. But it's an interesting movie. I don't really know why they decided to use the Police Story name for it, because it's just such a departure from the other police stories. It's just so serious. He still does do a little fighting in it, but it's more scaled down, and because he would be a lot older at that point. Yeah, Police Story 1 and 2, just because they pick up right after each other, I just always sort of blend them together in my mind. Like, I can't really pick one over the other, because they're just sort of kind of like Halloween 1 and 2. 2 just picks up right after 1. So.
Right.
So I know they're separate movies, but I don't usually watch them separately.
I think I've seen Super Cop, but it's been quite a while. I don't remember anything about it.
Super Cop's really good. Michelle Yeoh has like sort of a breakout star-making role in that, because she's like the.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say Michelle Yeoh was so awesome in that he was worried about her upstaging here, and that's why there's that whole scene that was written hastily into the movie. It wasn't originally, where he's like hanging from the helicopter and they're flying through and he's smashing through signs. Like, they wrote that on the fly because he wanted to add something, because he felt like Michelle Yeoh was ahead of him in cool action scenes in that movie.
Right, I remember you telling me that. I've seen Super Cop, but I think it was repackaged and released here just as Super Cop. No Police Story.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I was the same way. I saw it at like my 10th or 11th birthday. I rented it, and that was, I think the cut that was just mentioned here. There is a better cut. I've seen the main cut. It's kind of a crime that I still don't own like the proper versions of this movie. I'll tell you something really weird. So while I'm here, my parents have more channels than I have, including ones they don't even watch. But they have this channel that is kind of like one of those deja vu things, where it's just like a bunch of old stuff, like you can watch like Happy Days and shit like that on it.
Yeah.
It shows the weirdest movies like randomly at night. Like last week at like 3 a.m, it showed Wheels on Meals. And I had to record it, because that's one of Jackie's movies from the 80s, like way before he came over here. That's the one I always reference. That's because there's 2 different movies that has the American kickboxer Benny the Jet Urquidez in it, and he has fight scenes with him in both movies. The later one is gorgeous. So that's in the 90s, but the first one was this movie. Still considered one of the best fight scenes of all time in cinema, and it was just on that channel, and I have no idea what. But I recorded it, and it wasn't dubbed either. It was subtitled. The quality looked kind of bad, but I mean, I was just so thrilled to finally actually be able, because I'd never seen the movie the whole way through. I'd only seen like fight scenes. It's not like the movie's that good. It's sort of like a goofy thing. It's like this. He's with what's his friend has been. It's one of the ones that was directed by. I can't remember anybody's name anymore. But the guys that he was in the Chinese opera with, that he came up with. They did all the circus stuff with him when he was in the Chinese opera, and they were always together. Like Ben Young or whatever his name is. So anyway, those 3 guys, and one of the fatter guy who's he's the guy that directed. He's in it, and he also directed it. God, I need to look this up. Screwing up all our Chinese and Korean names this time today. I don't know. It's called Wheels on Meals instead of Meals on Wheels. I think they just thought that was funny, and it doesn't really work at all. Okay, so Sammo Hung and Yen Bao. So it's like Jackie Chan and Yun Bao are these guys. It takes place. It's in Barcelona, Spain, and it's called Wheels on Meals, sort of, because they have a food truck. So they have a food truck, and Sammo Hung plays this guy that they kind of know, who winds up being a private eye, and he's trying to find this woman. And it's all about how she's like, she didn't even know, but she's the daughter of some like duke or something, and people are trying to kidnap him. So it's not much of a plot. But anyway, I mixed them up. But anyway, those are he did quite a few cool movies with them in the 80s that like not enough people over here have gotten to see. And it was just so random that it was on that channel. You know what that channel showed a couple nights ago? A movie that I hope we can do on this channel at some point, and we almost might have done when we did our series on my God, our series on Orson Welles, and that is the adaptation of the book, The Trial. They showed The Trial. Like, what? What a weird channel. And what a weird, random array of movies you're showing. But I'm just keeping an eye on it now because I'm like, if they show one like Jackie Chan 80s Hong Kong movie, they might show another. You know, maybe one of those Lucky Stars movies or something. I've never seen any of those. Because yeah, that like group of guys like Sammo Hung and Yun Bao and probably a few others, that they did a whole bunch of great movies together. Yun Bao is every bit as good a martial artist as Jackie. He's just probably not the visionary. And he actually probably would have been considered better looking too.
That is some interesting programming. Makes you wonder, like, did they just like license a bunch of random stuff like for cheap and like, all right, here it comes.
Yeah. But anyway, so I don't even have it on my own thing, but I recorded it on my parents' DVR, and I told my mother, I said, you can't get rid of that because it's not anywhere. I can't find it anywhere. It's not streaming anywhere. You have to keep it. So hopefully she'll keep it. That's the other thing. Besides having more channels than me, she has like just like a ton of ton more space. She's got so much. Yeah. So there's several Lucky Stars movies. There's My Lucky Stars in '85, Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars, possibly also in '85. What else he do around the time? He's in Project A, but is he in Project A too? This is Young Bang, by the way. He's in Miracle, which this is probably the one I'm most obsessed with seeing. In Dragons Forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Sean mentioned earlier. Dragons Forever is the one where he fights Benny again.
Okay, I said it was gorgeous, so sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me. For some reason, I thought it was gorgeous. So, but anyway.
Yeah, I had forgotten that Stallone wanted Jackie to play the bad guy in Demolition Man.
It wouldn't have worked. It would have been terrible. Can you imagine Jackie Chan playing that kind of villain?
I'm fine with Wesley Snipes. I like him in that role.
That's what I mean. Can you imagine? I mean, obviously he couldn't play that exact character, but could you imagine Jackie playing like a character like that? Like he just didn't. Jackie has a lot of charisma, but not in that way. You know, it wouldn't work. Jackie Chan is like he knew, like he didn't want to play the villain. I don't think because he was worried about his image. I think he just knew he couldn't pull it off. But yeah, Yun Bao and Sammo Hung are in so many movies together with Jackie, and they came up together. And Yun Bao, did he direct any himself? I know Sammo Hung obviously did. But anyway, you know, and they were friends with who else we got there? Corey Yen, who is probably the most active nowadays as far as like he still does all sorts of fight choreography in movies. No, he's slowed down. But who's the guy? Oh, Woon Yai Ping is the guy we think of because he's the guy that did my favorite Jet Li movie, Fist of Legend, and that was like the main influence for the Wachowskis, right? They're like, we need this guy, and so because everybody talks about how Jean-Claude Van Damme brought John Woo over to America, and it's kind of like the other way. The Wachowskis brought Yin Woo Ping because he's stayed on and done all sorts of American movies for fight choreography and stuff.
How did he bring John Woo over, Van Damme?
You that movie that I really wish I liked, that everybody likes, that I can kind of
I know what you're saying now.
Hard to do, Hard Target.
So that was his first American film. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. But I guess the story was like, you know, this was pretty much the height of Jean-Claude Van Damme's fame, and he really wanted him to do work with him, with John Woo. I mean, it's a good movie, but I just think it's super flawed. Like, that's honestly, as much as like we shit on remakes, like I'm so ready for a remake of that because I feel like they could do it better. And I mean, I know that sounds crazy because I love John Woo and I really like Jean-Claude Van Damme, but I honestly feel like somebody now could do that like concept and things better. I still like parts of the movie. Like, I don't hate it or anything. It's not even like I don't even know if it's in my top 10 of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, which is pretty crazy considering it's not like there's a ton of quality there. But I've just never been able to like it. I don't like, I don't know. I don't like that it's like in Louisiana. I don't like that, or wherever it is. I don't like his character being some sort of like weird merchant seaman. And even though I'm of course also a big fan of what's his name, who's in tons of good movies, I don't like him as the villain either. You know, he's in everything. He's an alien and Predator and absolutely everything.
Bill Paxton.
No, the bad guy.
I'm not sure who's the bad guy in that.
Don't worry, I'll get it.
But yeah, I'm kind of like you. Like I like Hard Target. I don't love it. I wish I loved it.
Yeah, like I think it has like the ingredients and the setup.
Lance Henriksen?
Yeah, Lance Henriksen. He's the bad guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Lance Henriksen. He's got a legendary career. He's in so many awesome movies. I just find him really flat in that movie. So, I don't know. I've always had a really weird No Surrender. I remember No Surrender. Oh yeah, I mean I agree with that. I definitely want him over Kurt Russell in that. No, it's not even a casting thing. It's just like I don't know. I just want everything different. Like I want like sort of the script, but I want different people, different locations. Like I don't know. I think that's like Rambo Raff's favorite movie ever.
One of them, yeah.
He talks about it a lot.
You talk about like a different location, like that kind of takes a lot of the movie out of, it changes a lot of the movie.
Yeah. I don't know. I like it fine. It's just, it seems like it has the ingredients for me to really, really, really like it, and I just don't. Like, there's all sorts of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies I like more. And I realize they're flawed, too, because, I mean, it's not like his movies are masterpieces. They are what they are. And it's too bad, because I feel like, just kind of like Jackie Chan, like, Jean-Claude Van Damme, as he got older, became a better actor. But by then, he had to do, like, straight-to-video stuff. So you'll see some of his better, like, actual acting performances, but they're in straight to video type movies that aren't really that big of a deal. The one I really liked for that was maybe Wake of Death, where he's like this heroin addicted cop, because he's just like, it's like the edgiest characters ever played. The guy's like nuts, and he's also like losing his mind. It's pretty good.
I haven't seen that one.
It's a good one. It looks really cheaply shot too. Like I don't know what it was shot with, but it looks like it was shot with like some terrible kind of camera or some terrible kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Lens or something.
Oh.
I don't know. Some sort of filter. It has like the filter makes it look like shit. But it's a good movie and I would recommend it. And I haven't seen it in a long time. Some of these I haven't seen in so long I need to rewatch.
What's your favorite Van Damme film?
It's funny because I'm a martial arts guy. It's probably one of his less martial arts centered ones, although he does do martial arts in it. It's Universal Soldier.
Oh, okay.
I love Universal Soldier.
I might say Time Cop. That's probably one I go back and watch the most.
I own that on VHS.
I own, I think, most of his films that are that old on VHS.
No, that's the only one I have on VHS. I own the Blu-ray of Universal Soldier.
I don't like Cyborg.
I don't like it much either.
I know a lot of people always go to Bloodsport. I prefer Kickboxer over Bloodsport.
Yes, I know. But I understand why, but I guess probably because Bloodsport's a bit goofier. It's a lot like Kickboxer. It's just like pumped up a bit more. And maybe some people that works against it, but that's what I like. I mean, they're very similar movies, very similar plots. But I do like Bloodsport a little more. That might even be my second favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I mean, I should watch Kickboxer more because I've seen Bloodsport so many times. I have it memorized.
Yeah.
Like, I know Kickboxer well, but I need to watch some more. I've watched most of its sequels, and they're pretty bad. And I've watched like his two recent ones where he actually comes back for them, like Vengeance and something, and their shit.
Oh wow!
Even though there's like good fighters in it, like one of them had like a scene with Cain Velasquez, like throwing tables at him, and there's a few with some real mixed martial artists thrown in there, but it doesn't really deliver. I know one of them, the one from, because there's two. One is Vengeance, one the other has a really nice sex scene with a Thai girl that obviously had some surgery because there's no way those are natural breasts, but that's a good scene. But the fighting in the movie leaves much to be desired. But yeah, I always wonder about like an alternate reality where Jean-Claude Van Damme could have been in better, bigger movies. Because I have always been a fan of him.
Well, yeah, in his heyday, he was working with a bunch of idiots. So
yeah,
studio like the Cannon guys and stuff.
Right.
And those guys didn't make good movies.
Oh, I remember the one I really liked from that era. And I mean, obviously, that's the hockey angle. It's sudden death.
I like sudden death.
Fucking love sudden death. To me, sudden death almost, not quite, but it almost out Die Hard's Die Hard. Like, it's of all the Die Hard clones, it's the best. I would have to say.
It's Die Hard on A, Die Hard in A.
And this is Die Hard at the Stanley Cup final. What's not to love? Plus, it was shot during the lockout, so they got all sorts of the 94-95 season. So they got all kinds of real NHLers. Although in the case, they made a fictional final between Chicago and Pittsburgh, and they had all the Pittsburgh Penguins except their famously asshole-ish goalie Tom Barrasso, who refused to be in the movie or and he wouldn't let them use his name either. So they just invented a goalie and made him a total asshole, which I thought was great. It's like, that's what you get, Tommy. Whereas the Chicago Blackhawks were actually played by an IHL team at the time. One of them, I can't remember his name now, but he was a well-known journeyman who had time in the NHL. He was stoked because he got to play Chicago star Chris Chelios. And I remember Yarmer. So yeah, it doesn't have all the Penguins in it, but they use all the real names except for the goaltender because they wouldn't let him. But it has several real Penguins in it. Like at the time, Luc Robitaille, which is kind of weird because he only played one season with Pittsburgh, then he moved on. That's the last one I watched, Sean, is Maximum Risk. I hadn't seen in a long time. That's another underrated Asian director. That's Ringo Lam. You want to talk about an underrated Asian guy that people probably seen his movies but don't know who he is Ringo Lam. I wish I could find more of his stuff. It's so fucking hard. He's the guy that did City on Fire or whatever, which is the movie that Tarantino basically copied to make his first one, Reservoir Dogs. It's like pretty much the same plot. Except the actors are actually cool and interesting. I know I'm a small minority. I hate Reservoir Dogs. I hate everybody in that movie. And I know maybe that's kind of the point, but I'll never come around to the movie. I've tried over and over again. I'm like, maybe I'll feel different. I don't like Reservoir Dogs. I hate the dialogue. I hate the characters. I hate it. And I consider myself mostly a Tarantino fan, but I don't think I'll ever come around on that movie. But yeah, Ringo Lam did Maximum Risk. We talked about this before. He stars another one of those times when you have like somebody who's like a popular model. It's like maybe they can be a good actress. Natasha Henstridge.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
But that's the most recent movie I watched by him. I hadn't seen it for years, and I mean it's kind of a cookie cutter plot, nothing, but it holds up pretty well. The thing about it is it doesn't really have any really great fight scene or action sequences, so it's very middle of the road. But there's something about it I still really like. Plus, there is a part where like a whole bunch of like naked Russian gangsters attack him at a sauna.
Oh, I always love that. The best time that was done was in Red Heat with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Eastern Promises has a really good naked fight.
That's what I was going to say.
Which is also Russian gangsters. What is it about Russian gangsters fighting naked?
Hey, man. You got to do what you got to do.
That's how Habib Nurmagomedov trains. He goes to a sauna and fights Russian gangsters.
Just everyone wears Conor McGregor masks.
Yeah. So did you see that fucking idiot called out McGregor?
To say it.
This is one of the things where it's like, I don't care, you're both morons, but at least McGregor's the legit fighter. I mean, I can say it, as much as I hate McGregor, he is the legitimate fighter. And I mean, you're saying, oh, you're fighting, you're like, you don't want to fight. At first he says, you're 0-1 as a boxer. I'm 2-1. I'm 2-0. I'm like, well, he did fight one of the greatest boxers of all time, and he's not a boxer. What is the other thing he says? He says, oh, you're fighting a bum like Poirier, except he doesn't even pronounce Poirier's name right. It's like, fight me. It's like, it's mixed martial arts. He's a mixed martial artist. That's funny.
He would get destroyed. I mean, by Conor in a boxing match. I mean, destroyed.
Oh, yeah. I don't even what made Logan Paul famous. Yeah, I know he's a YouTube star, but what was his thing? What did he do? Like, I'm too old. I don't know what the hell he did. Because at one point, the way he said like Poirier was a bum was because he didn't have a lot of followers on Instagram. Because he's just so of that generation, right? Like, he's like the tiny percent of person that like managed to turn YouTube bullshit into fame and money, and that's how he judges everybody.
He is
have enough followers on Instagram.
He's exactly what I hate about this shit, about all this stuff.
Yeah,
he sums it up in one package.
Mm-hmm. Like, and the worst part is he's actually successful. I mean, he shouldn't be in a sane world. He wouldn't be.
That's Jake, I think, is the one that challenged Conor. But I think Logan is supposed to be fighting Mayweather. Is that right?
Oh, okay. I thought that was Logan Paul that did the call out.
Maybe it was Jake. Anyway, one of them is supposed to fight Mayweather, and they're both like, you beat up like an NBA guy who obviously did hardly any training. Like
Yeah.
he led with his head that entire match. Like it's like
I only saw the knockout. I saw like a GIF of the knockout. And like,
it's like textbook what you don't do in a boxing match. But that's
so. Wait, are they both Paul, Logan Paul, and Jake Paul? There's two of them.
Yeah, the brothers.
Oh shit, that explains. I did not know there were two of them. That's so bad. But yeah, there's something really wrong with the world. But it's funny. On the one hand, it's funny having the guy yelling at them and saying, "Oh, yeah," he's like, "You Irish cunt." Sure, it's funny, but I mean, you're also just some idiot. Like, you're not a fighter.
It's one thing that makes me like want to pull for Conor McGregor as much as I dislike him.
Exactly.
You know,
Just like I would have liked to have seen him beat Mayweather because Mayweather's such an ass. I mean, I knew he couldn't do it, but and it was still satisfying to see him lose to Mayweather. But I mean, I don't like Mayweather either. He's a terrible person.
Well, that went to decision, didn't it?
No, he knocked Conor out.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Well, he was still standing. The ref waved it off. He was just against the ropes, getting punched a whole bunch of times. And it was clear, like, they actually, like, gave Conor, like, the first few rounds. I'm pretty sure it's clear that Mayweather was just letting that happen, right? You know, I'll draw this out a bit.
Yeah.
Is what I figured. Like, because once he turned it on, McGregor just had no answer. As you'd expect. I mean, McGregor's a pretty good fighter, but he's not a full-time boxer. And this is, whether you like him or not, one of the best boxers of all time. Can't take that away from Mayweather. Anyway. But yeah, I did not know there were two Pauls. So they're both idiot YouTube stars.
Yeah, I think Logan is actually doing MMA. Jake, I believe, is just straight boxing.
Okay.
But Dana White said he may let Amanda Nunes knock him out, and she would too. She's a beast.
I know. She'd kill me, that's for sure.
I mean, he probably has 50 pounds on her, but she would destroy him.
Yeah.
Anybody would. Let him fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Exactly.
I mean, she would destroy him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is making a mockery out of the sport, isn't it?
I know.
You've got these clowns like thinking that they're anything. These people have been training for like 20 years to be at the top of their sport, and you get
leapfrogged by some idiot.
Yeah, and you only did it because of your stupid YouTube thing. Like, if you were just some other guy with no training, you wouldn't have even gotten a shot. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, considering you had a guy in CM Punk that at least was an athletic guy that had been a wrestler and then trained his ass off for 2 years and then was still easily beaten once he was thrown at the UFC. I mean, it really shows. So, yeah, just imagine taking somebody that doesn't even have an athletic background that maybe screws around, for fun. And is like, yeah, now I can fight the best professionals in the world. Sure, you can.
He made this video with him, like, calling out Conor McGregor, like, in front of his Lamborghini and his big house.
I watched it today. That's what I was referencing. I watched it today.
That makes me so fucking mad.
Like I said, at one point, he was calling Poirier a bum. His justification was that Poirier didn't have like a lot of Instagram followers because that's how you measure success in today's society, right? It's like nobody even follows you on Instagram. You suck. Like, well, anyway,
that's a measurement of success. Like, go call Poirier a bum to his face.
Yeah,
fucking piece of shit.
So Bellator has quite the light heavyweight division now. Speaking of which, Romero got cut. And now he's part of them. So now Bellator's light heavyweight division has Nemkov at the top as a champ. He just kicked the shit out of Bader. Bader's still there. Phil Davis. And now they've signed Romero. Oh, and Rumble Johnson's back and signed there. Those guys are all in the Bellator light heavyweight. That's pretty good. I mean, you could say some of these guys are past their prime, obviously. But it's not like it's just a bunch of has-beens either. I mean, look at the top five. I mean, if you take Jones out of the equation, because we don't know what's going to happen with Jones, you got like Blanchowicz. I guess you still have Glover. He's been really great, even though he's old as hell. He has been good. Then you have that Czech guy that I really like, Yuri, whatever his name is. And then there's the Russian guy, Radamix or whatever. I mean, they're kind of comparable, really. So I know Bellator often gets criticized because you're just taking guys off the scrap heap, that UFC let go. But I mean, that's a pretty good light heavyweight division. Bader at the moment is still, I think, he lost the light heavyweight title. He's still technically the heavyweight champion at Bellator, so maybe he'll just fight at that, which would be easy because Bellator does. If you want to talk about what they don't have, it's the heavyweight talent. He can knock those guys out for like the next 7 years.
It's the least entertaining division.
Yeah.
To watch.
But I don't even know what the next. Because so the last card I only saw like the top fights, which is fine. But I mean, that might have been the best flyweight fight ever. It was really, really good. And then I agree with it being a draw because Figueroa would have won. He got a point taken for the low blow.
Yeah.
Which you don't see much. Usually you have to nail a guy like 2 or 3 times before they take a point. He only hit him once, and they took a point. And I thought, okay, maybe that works because he's so hurt. He didn't even take the whole 5 minutes, so that's how I wonder about that kind of thing, right? Anyway, I guess it was the right result, and they'll have a rematch, which would be pretty good, but yeah. I mean, part of the reason flyweight was not entertaining was because it was Demetrius Johnson just decimating everybody in front of him. Not that he didn't sometimes do it in entertaining fashion. I completely forgot about this, so I saw it on a list somewhere, that when he fought, it was one of the guys that he fought several times because they didn't have enough guys. But remember there was a part where, I think he had DJ up against the fence, pressed up, and he couldn't move. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, DJ picks him up, slams him, and transitions the slam into an armbar all in one move and submits him. That is one of the coolest finishes I've ever seen. He's over in Japan having fun, which is good. He never got the respect he deserved over here.
No. But does the flyweight division still exist, or they've done away with that now?
That's what I mean. They still exist. Everybody thought, oh, he's gone, it won't exist. Then Cejudo said, I'm going to save it. He maybe did, I don't know. And then he fought bantamweight, won the title there, and promptly retired. So once again, flyweight was vacant. Figueiredo fought, became the champion. It's I don't know how long this is going to last. But then he just had an all-time amazing fight. And it was also the quickest turnaround either. He only just defended the title 30 days ago, and then he turns around and does it again. That's the record for fastest title defense, I think, which is pretty cool. Figueiredo seems really cool, but I mean that the Mexican guy he fought, Moreno, whatever his name was, a lot of respect for him too, because it was a war. Never saw a flyweight fight like that, title or otherwise. So really good.
That was this past Saturday.
Yeah. Or whenever the last one was. I don't even know what the next one is. It's a little way off.
When is the Poirier Conor fight?
It's got to be sometime in January because I think that's it. I think that's it for December. They'll have a Christmas break. It must be early December. It must be early January.
Yeah, Sean. That's why I remember hearing about that. That's when I first learned who Logan Paul was when he was at the Suicide Forest in Japan.
Right, and he got all that flack for yeah, because I mean that's the other thing. What is it that people liked about him in the first place? This is what he thought was funny.
Go try to watch some of their videos. It's the most ADD shit you've ever seen in your life. It's grown men acting like they're 5 years old and getting rich off it. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I guess that proves I've always felt that I was a very immature adult in a lot of ways, but that kind of makes me feel better about myself because I mean, I am above that kind of shit. I get it. I still like stuff that maybe some people would consider immature or kidsy, but not to that degree. I mean, that's just terrible. Anyway, yeah, I wish I could find more Ringo Lam movies, especially that City on Fire one. I actually did download it, but it didn't have any subtitles. So I went to really sketchy sites back in the day to find that too. That's on my other laptop. I should not have done that. I just really got mad one day. I was I'm going to find this movie, and I found it, but no subtitles.
He did Replicant also with Van Damme,
which is not good. I
don't remember being good. Yeah,
I can't defend that one.
He's still working though. He's apparently did a film in 2020.
Yeah, I mean he's a solid director. Yeah, he's just one of those under the radar guys that I like to bring up because I think he's pretty good.
I haven't seen City on Fire, so that's gonna have to go on my list.
Yeah, see, I saw it at college years ago. Might have been off a BitTorrent stream or something. This would have been 2002-ish, maybe. And I haven't seen it since. That's why I really want to see it. But yeah. So yeah, there's some bad stuff too in his filmography, but I just mean I'd say he's a pretty underrated guy. And of course, he also did Twin Dragons, because,
Right.
and that's the one where Jackie Chan plays the twins. So he's done some. I mean, he did Simon Says, or no, he wasn't the director of Simon Says. He was just a producer of Simon Says. Speaking. Funny is like his last movie is called Sky on Fire. And I think he has another one with On Fire in there too, besides City. Yeah, he's got one from '87 called, the same year he did City on Fire, he did Prison on Fire. So he likes that.
On Fire.
But yeah, Replicant's not good, but Twin Dragons is really good.
Twin Dragons. The plot sounds almost exactly like Double Impact.
I know, isn't it funny? Except it's more comedic. But I mean, it's still pretty similar. It's twin brothers that were separated at birth, and they were like, really different from each other, and blah blah blah. Maggie Cheung's in that; she's really beautiful.
Double Impact was first.
Yeah, but I showed you my copy of Double Impact, didn't I?
I think so.
Because yeah, it was expensive, but it was worth getting, because there was like some sort of series of movies you can get that are like, they're like retro, and they make them look like it's the VHS packaging. I got that of Double Impact. What makes me sad is that in Double Impact, I don't know who the blonde is in that. I mean, she's very pretty and everything like that, but one of the people that auditioned for the role was here I go again. Now it's an actress, so it's even worse. She's like Hawaiian, part Asian, and in Wayne's World and stuff. Tia Carrere. Like on like the extras, they have like footage of her like auditioning. I was like, oh, it would have been so much better with Tia Carrere, and she would have been naked. It was a nude scene.
She was yeah.
But Jean-Claude Van Damme himself like didn't want it. He wanted a classic blonde.
Blonde.
Like,
I'm not surprised.
The sex scene is like so cheesy. Like I know like the like 80s, early 90s has some embarrassingly cheesy sex scenes. This is like right up there. Like it looks like this terrible softcore thing you'd see.
Most of his films are like that.
Yeah, this might be like the most though, I'd say. But it's still worth watching because she is topless in it and she is really hot. But I mean, all I can think is it could have been Tia Carrere.
So what was Wayne's World 92?
Yeah, this would have been a year or two before Wayne's World.
Yeah, I think 1 year if it was 92.
Because she was not like a star or anything.
Right.
Because I mean, if she was, they probably would have cast her, but they were like, no, go with a blonde. We really want a blonde. Even though they thought, hey, it makes maybe more sense with somebody that actually has Chinese heritage to be in this movie, considering her character's in Hong Kong. But they're like, no. Anyway, it was really expensive, but I kind of like having it because, yeah, there's a whole series of movies. I can't remember what other ones are on there, but like they make the packaging look like the VHS and stuff. Some of them are really bad movies too. Like this is one of the more quality ones, and I wouldn't say it's a great movie by really any stretch.
No, I wouldn't either, but I do like it quite a bit.
But yeah, I like it. I'm glad I own it, especially.
It's Bolo Young at the end of that one, isn't it?
Yeah, he's awesome.
Doesn't he fight Bolo like in the like steam room?
Yeah, great Chinese strongman kind of guy. Like not tall, but big and heavy, strong.
And he was in Kickboxer, I believe, as well. Was he also in Bloodsport?
I get them. No, if the main bad guys in Kickboxer and Bloodsport are different guys.
Okay.
Bolo Young's the Kickboxer guy, isn't he?
I believe so.
Yeah, and he's also the bad guy years later in Kung Fu Hustle. Even though he's old, he's still really good in that. Stephen Chow's another guy that would be interesting to talk about on this channel. Stephen Chow's films. Because they're like, you think martial arts and comedy, obviously Jackie Chan, but there is one other, and that's Stephen Chow. Because I know using this as an Asian action film, we've pivoted to talk about other Asian action and martial arts, which I think is fine. We're not completely off topic here. So,
you know what, Cole? I think Bolo was in both.
Okay, then he wasn't. Then he was the main bad guy in one of them, but not the other.
No, I'm wrong. He wasn't in Kickboxer. He was in Bloodsport.
Oh, he is okay. I got them mixed up. Yeah, okay. So
I don't know who the guy is in Kickboxer then.
Yeah, the guy that I remember the guy's character was like Tom Lee. Kickboxer. Let's find out his name. Or not Tom Lee, Tung Po. Oh yeah, Michelle Kissy, or however you say it. He's actually not even. he's actually not even. Well, I mean, he's obviously of Asian descent, but he's part Moroccan, part Belgian.
Oh,
It's interesting.
I'll be damned.
And he actually came back for Kickboxer too. And he has like a cameo in Kickboxer Vengeance, the 2016 one I was talking about. Apart from that, he's not really in anything. And he's one of the fighters in Lionheart. I watched an interesting video on YouTube a few weeks ago. Some guy like did a breakdown of, because there's various fighters in Lionheart. It's about like underground fighting, and he would tell you who each guy was and a little about their background. It was kind of interesting. Right. Bolo is Chong Li, and the other guy is Tong Po.
Tong Po.
Who, by the time you get to the second or third sequel, even though it's not the same actor anymore, he's like revealed as like one of the most evil villains of all time. He's gone from a guy that like fights really brutally in a tournament to a guy that like kidnaps people and rapes them and commits murders and pays the cops off with the bribery. They turn him into like a goddamn supervillain by the time you watch like Kickboxer 3.
That's Sasha. I forget the guy's name. Sasha Mitchell took over as the Van Damme role.
Yeah, Kurt Sloan being the character. His name is Sasha Mitchell. Yeah, I mean he was fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like Van Damme's known for his acting chops, but
Brian Austin Green is in Kickboxer too. That seems weird. He would have been like
the main role.
No, I don't think he was important at all. Would he have been like a kid? No, I guess not. He's like 47, so I can't even remember. I haven't seen Kickboxer 2 in a while.
The only thing I remember from Brian Austin Green is the episode of Beverly Hills 90210 when does his friend shoot himself, or does he shoot the friend when he's playing with a gun they found?
Never seen a single second of that show.
They play it all for, it's like, oh, guns are bad, don't play with guns.
He's a name that I know, even though I've like seen nothing he's in, because he's mostly a TV guy, and I don't watch any of that. Like he's in movies, he pops up in movies, but nothing important. Anyway, I don't want to get on to him because he doesn't matter. It was just a name that jumped out at me. It's a name I remember for whatever reason, even though I never watched like the shows he was on or anything.
I think he's mainly known for banging Megan Fox.
Ooh, that's a good accomplishment. Put that on your resume.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I look up Corey Yin now as one of those guys from the Peking Opera School. That's what it was. Well, there was a group that included him and Jackie Chan and Bao Young and Mo Hung. They were all like together, and then they all came up in movies together.
Yeah, Sean, we don't really talk about Steven Seagal too much on this channel. We're not big fans.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
he's done a couple passably good movies. I mean, it's one of those things that makes me happy, though. As I said, it lines up. Like, not only do I think he's a shitty star or an actor, but he's pretty much a shitty person too. So I don't feel bad like insulting him.
Me either.
And he's also like one of those guys that, like, obviously he in his day he could do some martial arts, but mostly he's a big fucking fraud. Like, he still has like stories about like when he like started, like how it was a big deal. He was the first foreigner to have his own dojo in Japan for what's his thing, whatever his thing is. And like how like members of the local Yakuza came after them and he stopped them and he threw a grenade at them and the FBI got involved. Like that's all made up bullshit.
I think everything about that guy is made up. He's like in such denial. It's like
I mean, no, it's easy to take shots at somebody who's an action star that's gotten old, but I mean, he got fat when he was still pretty younger. He got fat.
Well, he got old and fat, and then still acted like he was a badass. Like, you harnessing his chi and like knocking guys over just by barely touching them. And
yeah, you see him do those like demonstrations where he'd like grab them, they'd throw themselves. That's for a movie. That's not real life, dude.
Yeah. Well, and him teaching Anderson Silva like before the fight, he's like, "Look, this is how you do the 1-inch punch."
Yeah. Well, the thing was, Anderson Silva knocked out the other Brazilian guy, Belfort, with that. It was a simple, like a very basic technique. It was a front kick to the face, and he tried to take credit for that. I'm like, for what? Teaching him like one of the like the first kick you learn in like any martial art. You taught him that. I was like, you don't even throw kicks in your movies because you have like no flexibility whatsoever. Show me a movie where he actually kicks somebody and it's an actual technique and not just like a normal soccer kick.
He's the guy that just went in and broke everybody's neck, right? He just like,
yeah,
like that's the running joke, like the Mad TV skit.
Yeah. Because crap. I mean, because it's martial art. I mean, it's a legit martial art and it's a good one. Aikido, that's what it is. I mean, and that's what Aikido is all about. Aikido is all about locks and holds and throws, and it is good for self-defense. But I just mean he tried to make it look like you're invincible with it. And that's the other thing that we talked about when we talked about like the difference between various action stars, whether they're martial arts stars or not, is like one of the great things about Jackie, not only taking the comedic route, but even when things got serious, he would show the limitations of his character. Like he would often be at a disadvantage fighting guys. He'd have to overcome it. You know, sometimes guys were actually too much for him and he'd have to figure out something to beat them. Steven Seagal just played a killing machine that never had any problems with anybody. He just mowed down everybody. There wasn't even adversity. Remember when he has that big fight that they build up in Under Siege 2? Because the main mercenary in that, he's supposed to be this amazing mercenary with this crazy background. He can't wait to kill Steven Seagal. Then when they fight, Steven Seagal takes him apart, and it's like just a one-sided curb stomp beatdown. You know, I bet like whoever was choreographing that scene or writing that scene probably said to Steven Seagal, "Wouldn't it be better if like he's winning for a bit?" And Steven Seagal's like, "No, he can't even punch me."
That's how that's done, though. It's not just you build the guy up as such a badass and you just, pick him apart so quickly.
Yeah, but that's how he does in all his movies. He's just a killing machine. I think I showed you this before. One of his like many, many movies he's done in the 21st century. Like he's done so many illustrated. There's one where he actually fights a guy while sitting in a chair. It's on YouTube. Oh my God, it's horrific.
Oh man. That's definitely his style. Sitting down, seated fighting.
And he breaks all the rules that I consider that you should use in a martial arts or action fight. One is the audience has to understand the stakes. They have to understand, what happens if somebody wins or loses, or what the consequences of various violence is. In some movies, the stakes are like, oh, it's a little more cartoony. They can take damage that in real life a person couldn't take. Other movies, they show right off, this is realistic. If he, this happens to him, he's actually going to be injured. But so many movies don't do either. They just throw those out the window, and you don't know what the stakes are. Sometimes a guy can take a certain hit. Sometimes he can't. Sometimes a guy can pull off an impossible, crazy move. Sometimes he can't. Like that's one of the things. And his movies do that all the time. They just fluctuate. There's no rules. There's no logic. I mean, then of course all sorts of stuff we talked about, various quick cuts that they do, especially when you have people that can't fight, right? You have like an actor and they want to make it look like they fight, like Matt Damon in like the Bourne Prophecy, right? You got Matt Damon in a scene in the Bourne, in the first Bourne movie, where he's fighting a legitimate martial artist in Atkins, right? Is it Atkins or Atkinson? You know who I mean. He's kind of like a protege of.
Oh, Scott
Atkins. He's fighting Scott Atkins. So there's a scene in that movie where he's fighting Scott Atkins, and of course Scott Atkins can do all the stuff, but Matt Damon can't. So they have to cut it in such a way to make it look like these are two guys that are of like equal fighting strength. And how do they do it? By all these quick cuts and by doing close-ups and all this stuff. So at the end you're like, okay, Matt Damon won, but I don't really know how he won. Like, so that's the other thing too. When you actually have two actors or performers that can really fight, then you can put the camera and let them go to work and not have to And again, I don't want to get this wrong when we talk about this, whether it's action or not. There's nothing wrong with a cut. Sometimes a cut is good and necessary. I'm not saying never cut. I'm just saying so many times it's just a shortcut and a cheap shot to make this cut. And just so many fight scenes of like movies, whether it's like that or one of the Fast and Furious things, like it's just so unclear what's actually happening.
Yeah, I don't like that. It's like I don't know who made that famous, but I like the long cuts with that they choreograph the scenes, instead of the, you kick, cut, Here's me
Right.
kicking you back, you know.
Right, you can actually see a sequence where, and that's one of
Yeah.
the great things about like the greats of like a Jackie Chan or a Jet Li, and in like a lot of their, especially in their like their final fights or boss fights, you have long sequences where a lot
Yeah.
of punches and kicks and moves and jumps and ducks are all done in sequence without a cut because they can do it and it looks great. But yeah, Steven Seagal. I mean, he has a few sequences that do that, but again, it's not very impressive. It's just him going, "This is Aikido." He's grabbing, and I don't want people to take it the wrong way. Aikido is a real, legit martial art that can be used well. And I'm not even saying he doesn't have any credentials in it. He has some credentials in it. I'm just saying the way they show him using it in movies is just ridiculous.
I agree.
But yeah, this got me in the mood. So maybe, I mean, I don't have access to the same things here that I do home, but it'd be good to do another live commentary of a nice action movie like we did with Police Story.
Yeah, we got to do Police Story 2, and we're going to do it now. We're going to do it at Highlander, where we... It was another one we were going to do, but we never got around to it.
Well, I know one.
The Raid 2.
The Raid 2. And another one I'd like to do is my favorite Jet Li one, which is Fist of Legend. I'd really like to do Fist of Legend. That has a great final fight. That's Jet Li versus... He's actually Canadian born, but he's of Chinese descent guy. He was a kickboxer, and he still has a school out somewhere in Alberta. He's so good. He plays the Japanese general in that. What's his name? It's like Billy or something. I don't know. Anyway, he was really good in that. That's a good movie because it's a really great blending of showing Japanese and Chinese styles. It's one of the things that makes it like a little bit better because it technically is a remake of my favorite Bruce Lee movie. My favorite Bruce Lee movie is Fist of Fury, and Fist of Legend is just a remake of it. And I do think it's a little better. Maybe for some people that might be Big Boss. That's his first one. Yeah. But my favorite has always been Fist of Fury, which is sometimes called the Chinese Connection.
There you go. This is your second favorite Jet Li film, right, Cole?
I've come around to Kiss of the Dragon, but I would not consider it that great. I mean, it's okay. He does do some cool stuff in it, but sometimes I'm not going to lecture anybody. I don't know what else seen, but sometimes I think people that like Kiss of the Dragon, maybe there's just a lot they haven't seen. Like maybe you need to see Swordsman 2 or Once Upon a Time in China or something.
I like those films like that, and like, Black Mask was a big push over here. I know you don't like it, but
it's okay. I'm glad. I actually own it in a set. It's weird because it's like 3 really great movies and then Black Mask, which is, it's fine for what it is. It's like a cheaply made sort of B movie. No problem there. It's still Jet Li.
That stuff is what kind of put Jet Li on my radar. So that's when I went and tracked down, the other stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, like same here. He gets pretty big over here doing the Lethal Weapon 4, right?
Yeah.
Which I still think is really good. I still really like. I think that's the underrated Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon 4.
Need to watch that one again.
I actually really like his, and that's another one where you're sort of following rules that I believe in, because at the end fight with him and Riggs and Murtaugh, they do a good job of showing that obviously he's a better fighter than them, but there are 2 of them, and they are bigger and heavier, and they do use those to their advantage. Like, I like that. They're showing the limitations and the strengths of the fighters and how they might. I'm not saying it's a super realistic fight, but in some parameters it fits. It seems somewhat realistic. It's like, okay, he's way too fast for us. His technique is way better than us, but we are bigger and stronger, and there are 2 of us, and they really do try to show that. And he's still beating them until they actually impale him. They actually wind up putting he gets impaled, and he's still fighting them. It's pretty good. They have to drop him into the water and drown him to actually kill him. And that's one of the famous movies. There's that one, and apparently this has happened multiple times, but it's hard because sometimes people think it happened in different movies. But I've confirmed that at least on the set of this one, and actually a much later movie, The Third Mummy, where he's the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, on both those were both times that can be confirmed that the director or whoever actually asked him to slow down because the cameras were not catching it properly. But they're like, you're too fast, which is pretty crazy.
Oh, you just got this guy that burst onto the scene. That's this tiny Asian guy who's just insanely fast, and does all these flips and shit. It's just like, damn, what else does this guy have to offer?
Right,
And you look,
and he's into his 30s by now, because actually, you
Yeah.
know, stardom came hard for him. His 80s movies did not work out for him. He was good, but you know, he's like in Born to Defense and a few other things, and you know, they're not very good. It wasn't until about the early 90s that he finally got into some really good movies. So he was already a bit older. And then of course he was even older then when he broke through with the, you know, international or North American audience, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I was obsessed with him and Jackie Chan, like at the end of the 90s.
yeah, me too. It's like, you know, Rumble in the Bronx comes out here, and then I start looking up, you know, other Jackie Chan stuff. So, you know, you got to get introduced somehow, you know.
Right. And it wasn't
So-
just martial arts too. It was stunts, right? That's what really made me, you know, respect, you know, the work and the risk and everything that goes into good stunts. So whenever I do any sort of movie that has action in it, regardless if it has those guys, you know, I want to talk about or focus on and analyze, you know, what some of the stunt work might have been like. And one of the things I like to point out, I think I said this about some of the Jackie Chan movies, which includes Police Story, or at least one of the Police Stories. Yeah, Police Story. But also one of the ones I really like, Who Am I, is that there's a lot of underrated stunt driving in Jackie Chan movies. There's some really good like chase scenes and cool things like that. But yeah, Who Am I is like maybe my favorite like under the radar Jackie Chan movie. Although I know it's hard to define what under the radar means in this context, because it's like, do you mean before he got famous over here? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously, he has all sorts of good, well-known movies from the '80s that people over here don't know, but they would be considered big hits, like something like, you know,
Right.
like Project A. It's like, you know, a martial arts fan knows what Project A is, but you know, the average person probably doesn't.
Yeah. But you got to get introduced somehow. So
Exactly. Yeah, I never want people. You know, I'm not trying to be snobbish. Like, oh, you didn't see this. You know, like because everybody has to start somewhere. So I'm not trying to be snobbish or tell people that they haven't seen anything. All I want to do is, you know, recommend things I think people would like and enjoy if they can find them. But yeah, I really want, like, it bothers me. I don't own any of like Jackie Chan's like movies because in like all those like American versions of his DVDs suck. They're just bare bones, crappy things, and some of them only have a dub and don't even offer subtitles, for God's sake. That's how I own Who Am I, which does have subtitles, luckily. But I mean, it's just a shitty thing, you know. Like
Yeah.
I'm very happy to own the first two Police Stories properly, but that's how I want to own the others too.
it seems like something that would be great in a box set, and I feel like that would sell too.
Does anybody know why no Bruce Lee box set has Enter the Dragon? They have all his movies except Enter the Dragon. What is the rights issue there? Why is Enter the Dragon separate from the rest of his career?
Got to be licensing somehow.
Because I own a very old box set, and I'm sure there are newer ones now, but they're still the same movies. Like Enter the Dragon is not part of it. I own the Bruce Lee box set. It has all of his movies except Enter the Dragon, and somewhat kind of to make up for it, it has Game of Death too, which he isn't even technically in. Like there's maybe some footage of him in it, but it was made after he was dead.
It's Bruce Lee.
Yeah, one of those Bruce Lee clones, which I know we've mentioned before, is something that like they wanted Jackie Chan to be, and that's one of the reasons he struggled early in his career too. It's like, you know, somebody has to fill the void of Bruce Lee. You know, this guy cut down his prime. Jackie, you're so talented, you could do it. Jackie, you know, he realized I'm a different guy. I have a different sensibility.
Right.
I need to make movies my own way, and that's why when he found his stride, it was when he actually got to direct his own movies. It's like other directors didn't really know how to use him. Like you watch The Young Tiger. The Young Tiger's fine, but it's completely forgettable. It's like, okay, The Young Tiger, Jackie Chan. Yeah, he does some fighting and it's fine, but you know, he doesn't have that flair and feeling that his later movies would have because he didn't have his personality and his style really in the role yet. Drunken Master, I guess, is the first one. That's 78, where that really happened.
Yeah, I mean, it took him some time, but he really broke out and really, you know, set himself apart, you know, as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm not just a Bruce Lee ripoff, you know?
Yeah, exactly. He gets killed by Bruce Lee in which it might even be Fist of Fury, where it's not completely clear he's killed, but he gets like kicked kind of off screen. I'm pretty sure it's Fist of Fury because I think it's in the Japanese dojo when they're outside in the garden. I think he's one of those guys that gets like kicked through a wall or window or something. He'd be really young there. He'd be like 21 or something.
Yeah.
But one thing is I do remember is that my Prime has a lot of not much Jackie Chan, but it does have a lot of these classic martial arts. So maybe while I'm here, we can find something on Prime to do a live commentary.
Yeah, sounds great.
I'll start looking around. The basement seems to have worked out pretty well. I think I've run more smoothly, so that's good.
Definitely. Yeah, so I said, so mental illness doesn't exist, but apparently COVID does.
Yeah, I know, Tom. Well, I mean, I'm glad for that, Tom. But yeah, you've got a fuzzy grip on how certain medical things work. But anyway,
let's pick and choose what we believe in.
I thought maybe his thetan levels would have been able to fight off COVID. I thought he'd be immune to it because he has such high thetan levels. It's weird how that works. Mission Impossible 7 is finally happening. It's funny. Completely unrelated topic, but Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible made me think of it. Long ago, I recommend, and I think you might even be able to. I know it's on like HBO, but I think you can even find it on like YouTube. Have you ever watched any of the episodes of the Ricky Gervais show where it's just him and Carl Pilkington and Stephen Merchant talking?
I don't think so.
Because you would dig it. Because all it is, and it says in the overview, they have a series of pointless conversations. Here are some of them. It's just audio of them talking, but the video you get is like animation. It's just some crude animation, and they animate what they talk about. My favorite episode is they ask Carl, who's the weird guy. He's the guy they wind up using later for An Idiot Abroad.
Right.
Like he was this guy that he wasn't an actor or performer. He had some sort of technical job, but they got to know him. He was such a weird guy that they made an entire show based around talking to him because they love his opinions on things. And my favorite of all those shows is there's one where they ask him for his idea for a movie, and it involves Tom Cruise making Mission Impossible 7. Which back then would have been quite a few Mission Impossible. It was like 2004, 2005-ish. And I think it's the funniest one. But you would definitely love it. It's just them having random conversations around. It's like, what do you think of this, Carl? And he has some of the most weird opinions you'll ever hear. And just them reacting to it. It's so funny.
Yeah. I love all their other stuff they've done.
I think you'd really like it. And Carl Pilkington is such an interesting find. So yeah. Then I did watch some of An Idiot Abroad because they're like, it's like this is the most xenophobic, like closed-minded guy who hates everything and thinks everything different is stupid. I'm going to send him around the world to different countries. Like anybody else would be super thrilled. Like Ricky Gervais is going to like make a show where you're the star and you get to visit all sorts of places in the world. And he's like the only guy who would be annoyed by it. But like, I don't want to do that. So funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, his idea for this movie, I won't ruin it, but it starts with like a couple watching Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 7. They're like, you think there'll be a 7th? He's like, oh, there'll be a 7th. And he was right. All those years ago. This is more than 10 years ago. And
they were completely joking, I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't know if he was. It's almost impossible to tell when Carl's joking. He's such a weirdo. It's great though. But that's there's other good episodes. They're all pretty good. I think you'd enjoy any of them. But that's my personal favorite if you start watching, if you get around to that one. It's so funny. Speaking
of, you made me think of, who's the guy that played Willow?
Oh, God. Oh, come on. You know this guy.
But he was on Idiot Abroad a few episodes. And he's reprising his role. They're bringing Willow back. They're making another one.
Warwick Davis,
that's it.
Warwick Davis.
Get a name like that.
He's like he's one of my favorite actors, really, in a way. In a way, he's like played some of the really important roles to me in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm really happy for him. He's such a trailblazer as a little person. Right. And we covered Willow. We talked about what a landmark Willow was because he was the star. It was a movie here we are all these years later, and there still really aren't movies that star little people. Which is weird because, like, aren't they even getting into the treatment that, like, say, a gay person would get? Where it'd be like, the gay person is finally in a starring role. So, of course, the whole point is about how they're gay. Like, we haven't even seen any movies like that where it's just about how they're a little person and, the stuff they deal with in their lives. Like, we haven't seen those sort of movies. Because I know, like, now, like, gay people are so established in cinema that, like, nowadays, like, for instance, I guess finally on like Netflix or something, it's a big deal that there's like a Christmas movie. One of those Christmas movies came out, like a Christmas rom-com, but it's kind of groundbreaking because the couple's lesbian, which is great. But a lot of people sort of rightly criticized it and said it's kind of sad though that it's still like centered around like a coming out story. Because it's true, like if you're whether you're gay or not, but if you're into gay cinema, you're probably a little tired of the coming out stories. It's like, they were good, but aren't we past them yet? And I realize even now, today, it's almost 2021, it still is a big deal for a lot of gay people, depending on their situation, right? It's not just like, oh, I can come out and everybody's cool with it. No, a lot of people are living in situations where the coming out is still difficult. I get it. But yeah, I do think that we're getting a little tired of the formula of the coming out movie. We can explore that a little more. But I was going to say, little people haven't even gotten that. Come on now. I'm all for it. It's cool. So he's going to do another Willow?
Yeah, Disney Plus.
Oh, yeah, I remember talking about that. It's in development, scheduled for 2022.
I think they just announced it, or I thought they did. Maybe they didn't, but
yeah. I guess they gave it like a firm date, but even back then, I think there was talk about like a possibility of like a sequel or something. I mean, you can say all you want about him doing something possibly embarrassing in like the Leprechaun series, but I'm sure he had fun with that. And what the hell?
Sure.
I really hope he wouldn't have gotten flack from like, say, the little people community for doing a role like that, because I don't think that's fair. He's trying to be an actor, takes the parts. But I mean, Warwick Davis, to me, he's like an icon.
Yeah.
He's 50 years old now.
Let's see. Can you hear this?
I hear something. I hear talking, yeah. What's that?
That's Tom Cruise's tirade.
Oh, good for you. Sorry, whenever I think of the tirade, I think of the other
trash your fucking lights.
Yeah, that's what that will always be the number one.
McGee.
What happened to McGee? Are you still making great movies, McGee?
He did that Babysitter movie. At least the first one. He may have done the second one too.
I still haven't watched the second one, but I probably will because I thought the first one was okay. I got a kick out of it.
It's not great.
Mm-hmm. Warwick Davis is 3'6".
Wow.
Got to be definitely interesting going through life at a height like that. The world is not made for you,
Right. A lot of can you hand me this off the shelf?
Anyway, before we spiral too far out, we'll circle around to finish up with this movie. But I think it was warranted to get into discussion about other action movies and Asian stuff because it ties into this. And that's always something Jay and I like to talk about. But the good, the bad, and the weird, of course, unlike some of the other movies, it doesn't have a lot of deep meanings and themes and things to discuss. So we did our best to talk about its style and some of the technical aspects and a bit about the director, whose name I've already misplaced again. But it will come back to me. Because as you rightly pointed out, like he's Kim Jee-woon. Kim Jee-woon has had like a very sort of varied career. Like his movies are all, they all stand out from each other. He's done different genres. So, and I really do need to see more of his stuff. But I've seen the run of The Good, the Bad, the Weird. I Saw the Devil and The Last Stand, his American English language film. But I'm definitely interested in some of those others, like you said, The Sisters one, and definitely a couple of. And as I said, Age of Shadows was on my list. I don't even know what's around anymore, but I would really like to see Age of Shadows because I like period piece stuff and I like that era. So that'll be something to look into. And what's the other? Was it? Oh, hold on, it'll come to me. I'm trying to remember the other Korean director that we've covered on here before.
Oh, the one that did
Byung-Hun, the guy that did Mother.
Mother, yeah. Yeah, Bittersweet Life is good. I like Doomsday Book.
I can't find the list. Is it Jong Boon-ho? Jong Boon-ho?
That sounds familiar.
I'm close. That's not it, but I know I'm close.
Let's see. 1 second. It's Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah, I was close. Boon Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho.
Or Bong Joon-ho? Ah, yes, I see it.
Bong. Yeah.
Right, yeah, Bong, great. Yeah, so we've done Bong Joon-ho, who has definitely done, and he's obviously on top of the world right now because he did Parasite, right, which is really brought the spotlight to him and to other Korean directors, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think of him and the other guy we talked about, the guy that did the Vengeance trilogy. I always think of them as sort of the big two, but there's obviously others. Yeah, Bong Joon-ho and Chan Wook Park. Those are I always think of those two as sort of the big two. But obviously, as we said, there's definitely other ones that have distinguished themselves. And I know that Bong Joon-ho was a big fan of a movie we covered, and you can see some of his style. What was it? The one with Trasher Lights. The Machinist.
Oh, yeah.
He was a big fan of The Machinist.
Yeah, Hong Ji-na is a really good director as well. He did The Yellow Sea, he did Chaser. I'd highly recommend both of those to anyone who haven't seen them. He did The Wailing.
Yeah, Na Hong Jin. I don't think I've seen any of his stuff. No, I haven't. The Wailing's another one that's on my list. I want to watch The Wailing. That's on my Netflix list, and yeah, I need to get around to some of these.
I'll spare you my thoughts on it. Just we can talk about it when you watch it.
Sure. But anyway, as far as movies go that are like inspired by westerns and those sort of style, like this is a great homage to that. Plus, still having its own unique identity, because I think 1940s or 30s Manchuria is such a great locale for this sort of adventure. Very stylish movie.
Yeah,
just a lot of fun. And as we said, probably what you take away the most is you got three especially really big, elaborate action sequences, and they're all great. They all stand out from each other. One's got a train, one takes place in like kind of a shantyville place with multiple levels, and then the third is on the open plain. And honestly, you could even say it's almost like a little bit like Road Warrior. Almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost got a little bit of that Mad Max Road Warrior feel, and that you've got a lot of, even though there's less vehicles and more horses, but still, all these people moving across a plain and people overtaking each other and fighting and stuff. So it's even got a little bit of that vibe going to it. But yeah, really good movie that I was really happy to watch again because I hadn't seen it in like a decade. Still holds up. Very stylish, very fun. And it is good to bring attention to that director because he's had a pretty interesting career so far, and I definitely need to see more of his work. So that will wrap for The Good, The Bad, The Weird from 2008. And it's kind of whetted our appetite that maybe we can do another live commentary soon on maybe a martial arts movie or something like that. That would be cool. So we'll figure that out going forward. And then, a week from today is what, the 22nd, I guess?
Yep.
So a couple days before Christmas, I'm sure I can still probably do something next week.
Should be able to.
So hopefully we'll have another regular episode for you next week. At this point, we don't know what it will be, but we'll figure that out between us. But the basement seemed to work out pretty well. I got good lighting, and it seems like the connection did do better. I'll watch this later and see. Because honestly, when we did the show last time, like I mostly wasn't aware. I had to watch it later to see. It seemed kind of smooth at the time. But anyway, seems like things have gone better. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, guys. That's The Good, The Bad, and The Weird 2008. We will wrap here, and very likely we'll have something next week as we approach 2021, which I know everybody can't wait to get to because everybody says how much 2020 sucks. They're right, 2020 sucks, but it's not like everything's just going to magically get better. I wish it would. I wish 2021 would just automatically, some of the problems of this year, including the big one, COVID, would go away. But I mean, there's vaccines in Canada now, but it'll be a long time before things get to normal. And I'm not worried about getting a vaccine myself or anything like that. I'm just worried about other stuff. Like I'm not a high risk person or anything like that. So I'm all for the high risk people getting it first, but it's going to be a long time. I don't know how long it'll be, but all we can do is look to 2021 with hope and optimism because 2020 has been something, but
yeah, we'll see.
just got to make the best of things. So best wishes to everybody that's a fan of the show and tunes in, because yeah, we hope to be going strong in 2021 as well.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. That'll do. Have a good night.
Thank you. That'll do, Pig.
That'll do.